5.15.
But in the first round, he had to race the number 3 qualifier, Joe Amato, who had a 5.03 second elapsed time to kick off his season.
Well, if you were a betting man, you had to go with the car in the near lane, the 2-time champ, Joe Amato, here at the opening race of the season. But Don Prudo, well, as you'll see, he had other thoughts.
It was a great beginning for Don Prudhomme as he took his first round victory in a rear-engine top-fuel dragster, defeating a troubled Joe Amato.
So Amato could not take the measure of the funny car transplant, Don Prudhomme.
One of 3 categories we'll be looking at today. We'll also be focusing on pro stock and funny car, but of course, this is the top fuel, Steve.
And all eyes are on this second pair in the second round. It is a beautiful matchup featuring the Winston champion, Lorie Ormsby, who won this event last year, along with 5 others to earn that crown. And his competition today is Shirley Muldowney, the 3-time Winston champion. Shirley was asked how she saw the 90s.
I anticipate a good season this season, and then we're going to look at it after that. I think the momentum is there. All the stars are now over here where they should be, and I think Top Fuel is going to be the most exciting form of racing anywhere. I really believe that in my heart.
She wants an exciting race here. Shirley Muldowney out of Mount Clemens, Michigan, taking on Lorie Ormsby, the Winston champion.
Well, she wanted excitement. It doesn't get much more exciting than that.
Oh, Shirley Muldowney could not get a hold of the racetrack. Lorie Ormsby crew cheers him on to a 5:05, 279 miles per hour. He will advance to the semifinals. And for Shirley Muldowney, well, there's no second chances in this drag racing sport. Back in the funny car.
This is our first pairing. Lorie Ormsby taking on Dick LaHaye. Don, how do you see this one?
Well, the way I see it, Ormsby feels like he owns Pomona. He's won here the last couple of times, but Dick LaHaye is not going to cut him any slack.
Ormsby and LaHaye getting ready before this race. Let's go down to Steve. He is standing by. I'll tell you, that was a heck of an effort to get that car ready. Now let's get back to Top Fuel semifinals.
Lorie Ormsby does not come to the starting line totally full of confidence. He wanted a 4-second run in qualifying, and eliminations hasn't gotten it yet. And won't get it here. Dick LaHaye. 5:03, 272 miles per hour, and LaHaye even left the starting line ahead of Ormsby, something that rarely happens.
Cool. And here's a fella's done something no one else ever has. Kenny Caretsky, he's in his top fuel car, ready to face Lorie Ormsby, but he is also qualified in pro stock. The first time anyone has ever done that in NHRA drag racing. Lorie Ormsby pulls his machine forward, the familiar colors alongside as Caretsky starts his burnout. Ormsby follows out immediately. Don, more and more of the cars are deep staging this year.
That's right, Paul. It causes that slip that they get printed and given to them at the end of the track to show a better printed reaction time. Doesn't make their reaction time any better. It just looks better on print.
Let's go to the far end. Big concern in Top Fuel racing right now. Kenny Caretsky brings his machine back. He also suffered a back problem, a vibration problem Friday in qualifying, and therefore is suffering a little pain in that car.
You're looking at one frustrated crew chief for Lorie Ormsby, Lee Beard. They do not like this new 320 gear. They ran a much higher gear. They were a brute horsepower car. That's how they won the Winston title, and they're having a hard time dealing with it. Lorie Ormsby qualified only number 10, and that's very slow for that operation. Lee Beard, no smile on his face. It may get better as the day wears on. Now they're up against Kenny Caretsky. You gotta call this guy a rookie. It's only his second NHRA national event in the top fuel car out of Pennsylvania, but he has got an excellent crew chief, a man who's been around a long, long time, campaigned his own equipment, Mike Garrison from Fresno, California.
Well, I can certainly appreciate the pain, Paul, that Kenny's going through, because I had a back injury and drove a fuel car, and I had a full round to get ready each time. He's going back there and driving a pro stock each time between the top fuel rounds.
But Kenny said it hurts more getting in and out of the car than it actually does driving it. So he's in no pain as he sits there on the starting line as long as the car doesn't shake violently again. Kenny Caretsky loses traction. Lorie Ormsby wins it, and a ball of fire for Caretsky.
Kenny Caretsky tries to get the car under control. The parachute burns away. He jumps down on the brakes.
And that kind of bouncing around is the last thing a driver needs when already he's got a back problem, Don.
Oh, it must be just terrible in that car right now. He'd be lucky if he can even get out of it, Steve.
Emergency crews, the NHRA Safety Safari, on the scene as they always are, the best in motorsports. Let's take a look. Don, one more time.
It looked like he smoked the tires and then must have over-revved the engine, and then something let go, and fire it was. And, of course, it burned the parachute away, causing the car not to stop properly. Look at the thing burn up, and all that heat back here. It doesn't even look like the flames are there, but it burned that nylon parachute to shreds.
And down here at the scene, Don and Paul, NHRA's emergency people being very big fans of the Glidden Racing team. I mean, to get married in their pit, you got to be, right, Paul Page?
I don't know if it was that, Steve, or if he's looking for a job wrenching for the Glidden family. Out on the line in Top Fuel, there is the former Winston World Champion, Joe Amato. New car, new colors, and looking very strong. He's had lane choice, taking the near side to face this man, Frank Bradley.
And he earned lane choice because he ran a quicker elapsed time earlier today in round number 1 than did Bradley. Joe Amato, Old Forge, Pennsylvania, qualified number 5. Not that good for him, but the elapsed time sounds impressive at 4.99 seconds. And he defeated Connie Coletta in round number 1. The veteran from Michigan is out of here. Now, no surprise that his crew chief is still Tim Richards, one of the real geniuses in the game. Amato's going to pay him whatever it takes. Now, up against Frank Bradley, Bradley actually qualified quicker to 497 and beat Don Prudo in round number 1 from Santa Rosa, California. Junior Connerty is Bradley's crew chief.
You talk about some...
It was a thrill for both of them.
So Frank Bradley with 3 wins to his credit. The crew takes a final look at those big rear tires, wipes them down. He's ready to face Joe Amato.
Well, they won't be hugging at the end of this race. You can bet on that, Paul.
Joe Amato in the near lane. Hard to get used to that red, white, and blue color instead of the traditional candy apple, but what you see is what you get. This is the second race of the Winston season in NHRA Championship Drag Racing. A great start by Amato. And it is Amato. 5:03, 275 to a 5:11 and 271 miles per hour. Amato with great consistency. Back on the starting line, Don Garlitz is with Tim Richards.
Well, 5:04 in the first round, and now 5:03. Richard, looks like you're starting on a march.
Well, I hope we're on to something here. We've had a lot of trouble keeping it consistent in qualifying. It keeps slowing down, but this time it didn't slow down, so maybe we're on something here.
Good show.
Thanks.
So Tim Richards has certainly figured something out for Joe Amato, and that near lane looks good.
As we watch the replay, we notice that Joe was right on the light. Look at that beautiful advantage he gains at the starting line. And with the Tim Richards power as the car moved down track, Bradley was never a challenge this time, even though he ran a 497 in qualifying.
Joe, you left first and you got there first. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, Steve, the car shook a little bit. You know, I was real nervous because the sun's come out and the track's gotten a little bit slippery, so we're just trying to get down the track and go around at a time.
Your time slip is going to read 5:03.
That's pretty stout. Tim Richards and my guys are doing a good job here because this track is real, you know, it's right on the edge of being able to run a 4 or smoking the tires, and we're just trying to go one at a time.
Great job.
So Joe Amato looking good, seems pleased with that as we go. NHRA has given all of these decisions some very careful thought. Ready now. Top Fuel semifinal round. There's Joe Amato. He is ready to take on Gene Snow. Now, Amato has lane choice. He has decided on that near lane that has been so popular and so successful throughout the day.
Don Garlitz, Gene Snow has been deep staging both rounds today. I'm sure he will again. What advantage?
Well, Steve, the big advantage is it puts his car 4 or 5 inches down the track further ahead of Amato. But the disadvantage is he's that much closer to a red light, and it does hurt his elapsed time because he does not get a roll at the light.
What a drag race. The decision goes to Joe Amato, 5:08 to a 5:12 at 273 miles per hour. In a race that close, maybe it's not so stupid to deep stage when a race could be won by 3 or 4 inches.
Well, that's just exactly what they're thinking, and that is why the guys do it and the gals. Lorie Johns was one of the first ones that did a lot of deep staging. If you're on a real close decision like you're going to see right here, that couple of inches is very important.
Let's go to the far end. Here's Steve.
A 5:08 at 273 puts Joe Amato in the final round. That sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's welcome to the site, you know, my new blue car. Good run, you know, right there, buddy. The first time since we've been running in 10 years, Steve, that we haven't had a red car, candy apple, you know. So
you're not superstitious. We all know that.
No, but, you know, they call me Captain America. You see my little Snoopy on there with the cape on him? My guys are really, Bruce Larson's really busting my chops because I used to always tease him when his car was red, white, and blue and he had stars on it and all. So really, we're, you know, just happy to be here.
and he's bumped. Now, who will he face in the final round? Ron Tolbert takes a look at Shirley Muldowney and brings her back into position. She has the near lane with Lane Joyce as she's ready to face the Winston World Champion in Top Fuel, Gary Ormsby.
Don, if confidence is a factor, I'd give the nod to Muldowney.
You bet. Did you see how long and slow she backed up, just taking her own sweet time? Looked like the old Shirley, didn't it?
Absolutely. She knows that car has got a 4 in it. Gary Ormsby far lane, Shirley Muldowney near lane here at the NHRA Motorcraft Arizona Nationals. Shirley staging very carefully. Ormsby the last to stage.
Both de-staged. Shirley up and away, almost gets into Ormsby's car, completely in his lane. What a driving job, bringing that thing down and not getting into the guardrail.
What a driving job by both of them as Gary Ormsby took a evasive measure just in the nick of time.
Ormsby drove that thing like a sports car to get away from Shirley. Look at the front wheels on Shirley's car as it slammed back down. Don Garlett's a very scary moment for Shirley.
It certainly was. Look at the car, was carrying the wheels right from the start. But Shirley wasn't about to back off. Higher and higher it goes over the cones into Ormsby lane. Look at Ormsby steer away from. You don't see much of that in drag racing. Actually driving it like on the NASCAR tracks.
One behind the other. I bet that got everybody's attention. Let's go to the far end. Despite the problem, Shirley's pretty happy with that. Let's take a look at the pairings now for the final round in Top Fuel. Joe Amato faces Gary Ormsby, 2 former world champions. And Amato will have the choice of lanes. Steve?
Well, Gary, I don't know what you saw, but if you saw Shirley Muldowney, she reminded you of you last year at Brainerd.
Yeah, I saw her coming over. I thought she was coming over on top of me. That's why I backed out.
I think you both did a good job in that one.
Yeah, we looked pretty close. You know, I don't know what happened. I don't know. I just saw her coming over, right over on me, so I backed off the throttle, you know.
You're going to the finals. That's the important thing.
That's for sure.
And everybody's in one piece. That really is the important thing.
Well, Ormsby tried to fly his car in similar fashion at Brainerd last year. Fourth rounds off the top 5. Now we're ready for the final round in Top Fuel.
And I have a feeling we may have saved the very best for last. Gary Ormsby, the #1 on his car. Well, that tells the history of his last season. He is the Winston champion against Joe Amato, the man he stole the #1 from, Big Daddy.
And who finished #2 last year. So this is a race of races. You know, Joe Amato, he wants to win this race. There's no love lost between these two drivers. You know, when you run that heated a competition over a whole year's period of time, it gets very difficult to be real friendly.
And Ormsby would love to have Amato's lane, but he lost lane choice in that encounter with Shirley Muldowney when he had to get off the power. Ormsby the last to stage. It is Ormsby away first. But Amato, with a racket-sounding engine, still wins it at 5:05, 275 to Ormsby's 5:11. Joe Amato is your champion. Don is at the starting line with the crew chief.
Heck of a job there, Tim.
It always feels good to be in the winner's circle. My guys did a great job, and Joe is being part of this crew. He's just a real good driver. We enjoy this kind of stuff.
Well, we know you've had a hard time getting adapted to all these new rules, but it seems to be coming around.
Well, sooner or later, the cream will come to the top. Thank you.
Good luck.
So Tim Richards goes down to join Joe Amato. Notice Gary Ormsby's car. He was again deep stage.
He took a tremendous starting line advantage. He was ready for Joe Amato, but that clutch combination of that pneumatic timers was just a little bit much. Beard hasn't quite got the handle on that yet. Amato was losing pistons, but he still got to the end first.
Well, this championship final was won by the team that best managed their horsepower. It hooked up all the way down to a 5:05, Joe.
Steve, what can I say? You know, it's been a couple months here. It's a pleasure to bring our new team, Valvoline Top Fuel Dragster, into the final here. You know, Mr. Gasket, Joe Ruck is up there up in the suite there looking on. He's one of our sponsors, Keystone, Key Parts. We've got a lot of sponsors, a lot of people help the car.
Tell me about the race itself.
Well, it was Gary Ormsby's always leaves the line good, so you know it was going to be an exciting.
Did again.
I'm sure of that, but you know, Timmy said we got to just go for it. He hopes the track was good. They tried to put the motor on a little extra power and step it up in the final, and you know, we just was hoping that we had enough, and my job was to get off at least even when we were close. See, everybody gets confused with this deep stage and stuff. Sure. Everybody has to get that straightened up, but you know, the car went out and it shook just a tweak, but it went right down the track. You know, and we were side by side, and all I kept hoping is because it was starting to drift a little, went out of the center line a little bit, and I tried to just make it, keep it straight, so get the maximum performance. And I didn't really know if I won for sure. It was that close.
So much for Joe Amato having to have a red car to win.
Well, the Team Valvoline red, white, and blue car, they call me Captain America. Hopefully it'll bring us a lot of luck. We're real happy to be involved with Valvoline. They've got a good Say No to Drugs program, and it's a nice company, and we're a real pleasure to be here.
Again, congratulations. Look out.
Leo Gastelum backing up under the direction of his crew, headed up by famous Amos Satterley. Gastelum had the thrill of a lifetime in his rookie debut run in competition. He was racing the Winston champion, Gary Ormsby, in round number 1. Gastelum came into the program as an alternate for Connie Coletta, who suffered that devastating qualifying crash that we saw. And in that first round race, Gary Ormsby smoked the tires. Gastelum across the finish line with a 5.08 second elapsed time. That 5.08 is good, but he's going to need as much as he can find against Joe Amato, who qualified 5th with a 4.99 and beat Kenny Caretsky in his first round race. The difference between the winning times of Joe Amato and Leo Gastelum in round number 1 was only 3 thousandths of a second, enough to give the choice to Gastelum, and he has selected the lane furthest from the camera. Amato across the finish line by a couple of car lengths. He takes the win at 5.04 seconds. His speed over 271 miles an hour. Gastelum slowed to a 5.20, but had a big starting line advantage. He moved first, as you see here in replay, but it was just instantaneous for Amato and the Valvoline Special as he quickly pulled alongside and then ahead of Gastelum, till at the finish line, more than a car length victory and an advancement into the semifinals. He will race Gene Snow, where Amato has the choice of lanes. The other, Steve Evans.
Well, Joe, after watching Eddie and Lorie, you had to go to the line holding your breath.
It's been the upset nationals here, boy. Everybody's smoking the tires. It's bad out there.
Some hook up and some don't. Why?
It's just your combination. If you're a little too greedy and try and get that little couple hundredths more, just it smokes the tires. Nobody knows why. You don't know which lane is the right one at all. I mean, it's just nervous time.
Subdued and serious, unusual for Joe Amato. Funny cars next at the Super Nationals. His funny car. And here is Gene Snow with his new crew chief, Brad Tuttle, up in the semifinal round to challenge Joe Amato. Amato, having the lane choice, has selected the lane nearest the camera. As you just heard Warren Johnson say, as far as he's concerned, there's very little difference between these two lanes. But there's a world of difference between a Pro Stocker with about 1,200 horsepower and these 4,000 horsepower top fuel dragsters. Amato up in smoke. Gene Snow out in front. Amato's trying to catch him. He's getting sideways, but he can't do it. Gene Snow goes into the finals with a run that will not go into the history books as a record-shattering one, but certainly the crowd loves it. A 7:23 was all he could muster when he had problems, but of course Amato had smoked the tires before him. Hill qualified in the 14th spot with a 5:21. That earned him the right to race the number 3 qualifier. Joe Amato, the winner at Phoenix, who had qualified with a 5:06. That first round race between Hill in the far lane and Amato in the near lane was a throwback to the late 60s, with both drivers smoking the tires violently. Amato tried to recover but failed. Hill was successful. After the race, Steve had a chance to talk with Joe Amato.
It's an unknown thing because the temperature was 85 all week and had a little cloud cover. Now I've got a clear sun on the track.
Better air.
And better air. So you have to basically detune the cars a little bit to get down the track. And, it just, sometimes you're right on that edge. You don't want to detune them enough to lose. You don't want to have too much.
Well, you cross the edge, unfortunately.
Well, we're right over the edge and we smoked the tires. What are you going to do?
In Gainesville, Florida, in the 21st Annual Motorcraft Gator Nationals. We're in round number 2 of Top Fuel Racing, and this is the reigning Winston champion, Gary Ormsby, at the wheel of the Castrol Special. Next to him, 24 years old, out of Corpus Christi, Texas, Lorie Johns, the winner of the Winter Nationals. She qualified second at a 4.99, beat Jim Head in round number 1. Ormsby was the number 10 qualifier with a 5.14. He defeated Frank Bradley in his first round race. Lorie's 4.99 in qualifying, continuing the effort she put forth. She had four-second times consecutively at Houston in that Jolly Rancher Special. She's up in smoke this time, and the blower belt comes off, and Gary Ormsby goes through with a win. A great time, 5.06 seconds. His speed over 280 miles an hour. Lorie's problem setting in just after she got off the starting line pad. Just as they passed the Christmas tree, Lorie's car went up in smoke, and then the supercharger drive belt came off, and the supercharger itself backfired. Into the track, Steve's with the Winston champion.
Gary Ormsby, the first driver to put together really strong back-to-back runs today. 5:03 round one, 5:06 round two.
Felt good, Steve. We didn't do much to it because we thought the track would be a little bit lesser than it was the first round, and we kind of left it alone, and it looked like it worked out for us.
It's been quite a challenge for you and your crew chief Lee Beard to get used to this 320 gear, because you existed on raw power before.
Oh, there's no question about it. We're trying to get some consistency. We just changed this weekend, whole new clutch system, and from what we run the previous 3 races, it's working out for us now, though.
It certainly appears to.
Ormsby back to the pits. He'll be getting ready for round number 3. With Gwynn having the choice of lanes. The other pair finds the Winston champ, Gary Ormsby, against Eddie Hill. Ormsby selecting the lane. Year in a row, the defending champ goes into the final. His opponent will be the victor in this match. It is Gary Ormsby against Eddie Hill. Like a baseball player, Eddie Hill has been in a bit of a slump lately. A car that is capable of running a 493. He did that almost a year and a half ago. Lately, he's not been capable of getting much below a 520. Steve Darrell Gwynn, certainly a favorite of this Florida crowd. He hails from Miami. Ormsby in the near lane. Hill and his 5:11 in the previous round. That's the best time he's had in several races. Both drivers inching their way forward into that staging beam. Ormsby beginning to haze the tires, and Hill goes into the finals. This is a rematch of a year ago. Eddie Hill with a 5:12 at 274 will be racing Darrell Gwynn. Gwynn in his 5:02. That earns him the right to pick his lane.
That gets on the track, causing it to be slick. The teams come here, they automatically set the clutches loose to compensate for this loss of traction. But Darrell Gwynn yesterday just completely confused everyone when he blistered the track with a 494, became the #1 qualifier in top fuel, and in the process picked up $10,000. So you take the heavy air, the funny track conditions, and it becomes a problem of setting the clutch correctly.
And both smoked the tires in the near lane. I'm Steve Evans along with Paul Page and Big Daddy Don Garlitz, and we're going to go for a ride with Kenny Bernstein.
Sometimes it seems like you may want to climb out of that car and beat it with a whip, though. Kenny Bernstein, the onboard camera, he runs in the near lane, and Bernstein will be taking on Joe Amato.
And Don Garlitz, do you think the same is true of Bernstein's problems trying to make this top fuel car dominant as his 20 cars were? That man has certainly frustrated Dale Armstrong.
It would certainly appear to me that the problem is identical. Both of them have had to go to a hydraulic pneumatic clutch assembly, and both went to top fuel dragster. 2 major changes.
So Kenny Bernstein, the 4-time Winston champion in funny cars, he's struggling a bit in top fuel. He'll be the first to admit it, and so will his crew chief, Dale Armstrong. The 5:10, fairly encouraging. They still haven't got a 4-second run yet. This man has had plenty of them. Joe Amato, Old Forge, Pennsylvania, 2-time NHRA Winston World Champion. And Tim Richards, he's right there with Dale Armstrong as far as being a consummate crew chief, but he has more top fuel experience.
Now, this is a matchup not only of really great drivers, but really great crew chiefs. And it's strange to see a guy like Armstrong struggling trying to learn this new class on board with Kenny Bernstein.
You know, you're looking at 2 ultimate top fuel dragsters, the very best in the business, the finest of parts. This is the state of the art.
Absolutely, and we're going to go for a ride at 350 feet a second. You know the result, as does Kenny Bernstein. He saw Joe Amato drive around him. 5:02, 277 for Amato, 5:14, 272 for Kenny Bernstein. Let's go to Don Garlitz with the winning crew chief, Tim Richards.
Nice strong 5:02.
Yeah, we're plenty happy with that. I'll take it, especially against Bernstein.
So Tim Richards, with the win for Joe Amato, goes down to pick his driver up as they prepare for the semifinal round. Let's go to the far end now. Here is Steve Evans.
Well, Joe Amato posts the second 5:02 of the round. Nice.
Well, see, we're just trying to get down the track, you know. Kenny's been tough, and he ran a 5:10 yesterday, so when they burned up and the guy blew up in front of us, put a little bit of oil on the track there, it got you a little nervous, you know.
With his 494, Darrell going to serve notice that you're going to have to beat him sooner or later.
Yeah, well, thank God he's on the other side of the tree. We'll just pick one round at a time. We're glad to win the first one. If we can get the next one down, then we'll worry about Darrell.
That's the way you got to approach this sport.
There's Jerry Gwynn, Darrell's dad. And Don Prudo is ready to charge against Joe Amato. Amato will have his choice of lanes. But there's still a great deal more.
The Winston Invitational Top Fuel semifinals coming up.
Count on Steve Evans to come up with one like that. Rockingham, North Carolina. We're ready for Joe Amato to take on Don Prudo. You saw something on Joe's car.
Looks to me like Joe's sporting them $300 specs.
Yeah, but I got bad news for Joe. So it's Don Prudo. So that cancels any advantage the glasses may have. It's like you get a new blower, I'll get the same thing.
Yeah, the question is, maybe the snake just borrowed his pair and didn't have the $300.
That's right, he might have rented them from somebody. But he's got problems. The snake is not keeping pace with Joe Amato. Tim Richards relieved because he saw that car start to smoke the tires. And it runs to 5:01 at 279. Let's go to Don.
5:01 with that smoke out there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good considering to smoke the tires down there in the middle. I'm happy to beat Snake and Bernstein while they're still trying to figure this thing out. I know it's not going to last forever.
Can't be a lot more than that out there, can there?
No, I don't think so. I think that's about it. Thanks.
So Tim Richards has done some pretty good figuring on the lanes. And Amato takes the win in semifinal round Top Fuel. And Steve Evans is with Joe Amato.
Best of the day, Jose. 5:01.
Well, steady, Steve. We're just 5:01, huh? Let's hope that's lane choice. That could mean a lot here.
Oh, absolutely. The left lane seems to be where it is.
Well, you know, the better cars end up in the left lane. That means a lot. Yeah. You know, the cars that are, you know, so that makes the lane look good.
Then Spurlock in the funny car goes 29 in the supposed bad lane. So
yes, I mean, so it's, you know, just how your combination is to the lane, and hopefully if nobody makes a big oil down, both lanes will probably be pretty good.
Your equipment extremely reliable today.
Yeah, well, we had some trouble with the clutch that time. We had to put a fresh clutch in, and that just goes to show you what the crew can do to make things repeat. A whole brand new clutch in the car that run.
See you in the final.
Thank you.
So Joe Amato points out that it is a battle to try to get into the best lane here at Rockingham. Back at the starting line, within the range they were looking for, but it wasn't quick enough to take on the 5:01 of Joe Amato. So in the Top Fuel final, it will be Amato against Gwen, but Amato will have that critical choice of lane. So it's reasonable to say that both lanes are in pretty good shape for the final race of the day. There is Joe Amato preparing to take on Darrell Gwen. Now, with both of those past runs we've seen, these lanes really seem to be about equal now, so this should make for one spectacular drag race. The final run here at Rockingham. Let's go to the far end again at Steve Evans.
So you've got to be hoping right now, Paul and Don, that he can do what Jerry Ekman and John Force did. Come from the pole position and win.
So Darrell Gwen is ready. Now, one thing you can say about this car is it seems that no matter what the day and no matter what the racetrack, it goes down the track nice and smooth. Earlier, Steve Evans took a look at the possible reasons why.
More and more horsepower to the rear wheels as the car accelerates down the racetrack. Very, very simple and very effective.
Well, I think he's got the best clutch system in the business, and it's certainly the most simple, and sometimes that's the keynote.
They're staged. Amato to the far side, Gwen the near side. Good hole shot by Amato. He smokes the tires a little bit coming off the line, but Amato takes the win. Amato with a 5:04, 272. Joe Amato with the victory. Let's go to Don.
Looks to me like Joey gave him a driving lesson.
Yeah, I think he did that time. Our fuse was a little short on the other end. It's a good thing. I think Darrell was in a little bit of a wheel stand there in the middle of the track, and I think that was just enough to get us out in front of him.
Yeah, because it looked like a lot of fuel came out of the pipes on Joe's car.
Oh, definitely. We had a flashed on her. We've got some damage, but that one paid for it.
Good.
Thanks.
So Joe Amato with the victory here in the Invitational. Don Garlits, he got a nice hole shot.
Well, that Joe Amato was certainly not going to give Gwen a chance at the starting line. He's afraid he was going to pull another one of those fours. Gwen had the wheels up pretty good. May have had to backpedal that car just a little bit or touch the brake, and that could have hurt that ET, because if he could have run a 4, he could have won this race, because look how close it was.
And take a look at the first number on each line. That's the reaction time. Amato definitely needed it to take this victory. He's down at the far end now with Steve Evans.
Joe Amato, who is always so quick to give all the credit to the crew, to Tim Richards, when he takes that helmet off, Paul and Don, I hope he'll take a little credit for his driving. He ran 02, you ran 04, and you and I are talking.
Steve, I don't know who won. It was close, you know. You're going 280 mile an hour, and you're looking over there. It was a good win, you know. I knew I was going to be close on the lights, you know, because I knew the quote cars are running real good. And, you know, guy was looking for me Palm Sunday, and I guess he's looking over my shoulder.
Indeed, and a whole lot of money for Winston.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. You know, my wife, we went to the Winston banquet the other night, and my wife saw this beautiful Winston trophy.
Oh, the Steuben glass.
Glass. And she's, I got one of them, you know. I'm getting emotional here. But she said we got to have one, and she's going to go in the hospital for a little surgery here this weekend. And so I told her today before the race that I dedicate the race for her and the trophy. So
I'll come by the house someday and see where you put that.
Okay. It was a great one for Team Valvoline and Keystone Automotive. We've got about 360 customers here, and can't think of any better way to end it.
The Winston Invitational champion.
Good race.
Excellent race. Excellent race. Excellent.
Well, it's been a beautiful day, and we've seen some magnificent racing.
They do, and the largest crowd ever to jam into the new Atlanta Dragway is poised to watch the second round of Top Fuel Eliminator. Our first pair of cars, Joe Amato. And take a look there on the wing strut. You see fluttering in the wind the little strip of yellow. That is a yellow ribbon tied to these Top Fuel dragsters to send a message to Darrell Quinn. Get well soon, and we definitely miss you here at Atlanta. Amato in the near lane, racing Jim Head in the far side of the racetrack. Amato has already won one event this season out at Phoenix for Jim Head. He has won a victory of sorts. He is beginning to gain some performance out of his new Top Fuel dragster. The Ohio driver qualified number 8 with a 5:06. But how about Joe Amato? The driver of the Valvoline Special notched a 496 in qualifying to put him not only number 1, but in the track record book with the quickest elapsed time ever on the new Atlanta Dragway quarter mile. The burnout's completed. Amato staging in the near lane. In the far lane, Jim Head. A great race, not as close time-wise as it looked on the racetrack, though. For Joe Amato, a 5:14 and 273, a 5:21 for Jim Head. As we look again in replay, not only did Amato outperform Head, he also outdrove him. Joe picked up about 3/100ths of a second advantage off the starting line. He continued to battle with Head down the racetrack. At the 8th mile point, it looked to be very equal. Then right at the finish line, Amato squirts ahead for the win. Look at them. Have been very close to LaHaye coming into the Southern Nationals. The next pair of cars, the reigning Winston champ. Here's the Castrol Special of Gary Ormsby. While he has not been a winner in the first 4 events this season, Ormsby has finished high enough in each of the shows to put him in the top 5 in the Winston standings this year. He is racing the veteran out of Fort Worth, Texas, Gene Snow. On the far side of the track, Ormsby begins his burnout procedures. Snow now begins to roll forward. He'll go into a puddle of water, get the tires wet, then hammer the throttle and burn those big 17-inch wide slicks. Now let's go down to the far end of the racetrack. Steve Evans is there with Lorie Johns. Race car, she's excited headed to the semifinals. Look at Gary Ormsby's race car. See the go, the Gary Ormsby Racing. Look how high those side panels are. Totally blocked Ormsby's vision out of the side of the car. He qualified in the number 7 spot with a 5:05, beat Eddie Hill in round 1, while Snow was the first man in the 4-second range here in the new Atlanta Dragway. He qualified second with a 4:99 and beat Jack Ostrander in his first round race. Snow in the near side of the track. Ormsby on the far side. They're approaching the starting line area, getting themselves set in the staging beam. The lights on the top of the tree indicate when the car is ready. And that second light on the tree is lit. Buster Couch, the official starter, can throw the switch at any point, send them on their way. Ormsby with a carling victory wins the race over Gene Snow, a 5:13 to a 5:14, but a huge starting line advantage for Ormsby. Take a close look at the far side of the racetrack. If we look in replay, right there, you can see nearly 7/100ths of a second advantage going to Gary Ormsby. Almost impossible to make up. Gene Snow tried. He came within a car length. The time's very close, a 5:13 to a 5:14, but Ormsby was the winner. Steve?
That had to have been a squeaker, Gary. A 13 for you, a 14 for Gene Snow.
Oh, I didn't even see him. I don't know how close it was, but I actually never saw him.
That has something to do, I think, with the high panels on these new cars.
The thing is, Steve, they're not out in front of me. I can't see them. Maybe that's a good sign. When I see them, I'm in trouble.
Tell me about the racetrack.
It's off a little bit because we pepped her up a little bit for that run, you know, figuring that the track would go away a little bit, and our time went away a little bit.
Yeah, you will not have lane choice.
Who are we running?
Lorie.
Lorie? Well, I don't know if that's that big a factor. I don't think either lane's that good.
Stevie may not think it's that big a factor, but let me point out, every low qualified and every quicker car has selected the far lane of the racetrack, as Frank Bradley has. That sets up the semifinal pairings of Joe Amato against Frank Bradley, with Amato getting to choose his lane. The other side of the ladder, Gary Ormsby, the reigning Winston champ, against Lorie Johns. Lorie choosing her lane. Steve, it's time for the final four in Top Fuel Eliminator. Joe Amato in the far lane of the racetrack. Frank Bradley here on the near side. The question mark is, can this near side of the racetrack hold the power of a car like Frank Bradley's? Amato certainly hopes not. He has dialed his car in for what he considers to be the better lane. Both cars roll forward at the same time. They're set. And Bradley fries the tires, and Amato across the finish line and into the finals. His wife, Jerry, very enthused about that victory because Joe Amato just ran low ET of eliminations at 5 seconds flat. His speed, 287 miles an hour. That's got to be a happy race car driver and crew chief. That's Larry Meyer, the crew chief for Lorie Johns, because they're going to follow right in the tracks of Joe Amato, who just had that brilliant 5-second flat elapsed time. Her competition is the reigning Winston champ, Gary Ormsby, who, if you will remember, after his second round victory, said he didn't think the lane choice made any difference. Let's go to Steve.
Well, Joe Amato continues to harvest those Winston points with dazzling performance. 5 flat, 287.
Well, I guess Steve, Tim Richards and the guys did a good job. We've been struggling a little bit today, but you know the clouds are covering the sun and put the horsepower in it and stepped right up.
That is one of the biggest speeds we have seen this year with the new low gear ratio mandatory.
Yeah, we ran 287, 288 about 3 years ago with that combination, but you know that was then, this is now, and it's a different world out there.
David?
Steve, the new rules have certainly changed the face of Top Fuel racing, brought some parity to it, and that is one of the reasons why we have had a different winner at each of the 4 previous events thus far this season. Ormsby has yet to win a race. A year ago at this time, he was a dominant force. Lorie Johns won the season opener at Pomona in the Winter Nationals. A good start for both drivers. And Lorie Johns powers past Gary Ormsby. Ormsby had the whole shot advantage, but the 5:07 for Lorie and 271 was enough to put her into the finals. The time for Ormsby of 5:14. Lorie will race yet another Winston champion, Joe Amato, in the final. He won it in '88. Joe has the lane choice. Casey Spurlock in 4th, and Mark Oswald in the number 5 spot with 14 races left in the NHRA Winston season. Now, Lorie Johns is challenging the number 1 qualifier, the quickest car on the racetrack. That is Joe Amato, the 1988 Winston champ. In the previous rounds, Lorie has been deep staging, trying to gain an advantage at the starting line. A few inches here could mean a difference of a couple of feet at the finish. She does it again. And Lorie Johns wins it by just a couple of inches. What a tremendous race with Joe Amato. Lorie winning her second race this season. And what a celebration amongst the Johns family and crew. Lorie's mother reflecting definitely the enthusiasm of this victory, and it was close. The elapsed times identical between the two cars. 5:02 for Lorie Johns, 5:02 for Joe Amato. Her advantage at the starting line, about 2/100ths of a second. And look how close it was at the finish. Lorie wins it by just a couple of feet. Steve? 6-1. Reflecting the sentiments of everyone in the motorsports community. And look at this. Lorie moves into the lead in the Winston standings, followed by LaHaye, Amato, Ormsby, and Gene Snow. You know, you're looking at the big story after round number 1 of Top Fuel Dragster competition here at the NHRA Chief Auto Parts Mid-South Nationals. Engine damage. That was the quickest motor that Joe Amato had ever owned. It qualified him here in the number 1 spot, a career best 494, but it blew up in round number 1 earlier today, and the crew is having to build a spare motor from literally a bare block. Now, ironically enough, just a few trailers up, Gene Snow, their opponent in round number 2, also experienced major mechanical problems in round 1. His crew up to the same task. The big question is, can both cars even make it to the starting line on time? And I think the winner, if indeed that happens, will have a big pat on the back for all of his crew members who made the transplant successfully.
Okay, well, that time is of the essence. That's what drag racing's all about. As we get ready for round 2 of Top Fuel, Frank Bradley and Gary Ormsby. What a face-off this is going to be.
And it's the opposite of Bob Glidden and Warren Johnson. These two have been racing each other for 20 years and are still great friends.
Okay, as Bradley does his burnout, let's go to Don Garlitz in the staging lane.
Ormsby is not much better. The points are very close among the top leaders in the class, and that means we're going to have a good, close season of racing. And, of course, the fans like that. It makes it very exciting.
If there's a sleeper, Don, in this whole deal, I think it's that man right there, Frank Bradley. He has not broken many parts this year. He qualified number 7 here at 5:07 with the Winston champion. Gary Ormsby, who went through 4 race cars in a single season to amass enough Winston points to take the title. No one worked harder in season 89 than did his crew chief, Lee Beard.
And the NHRA rule changes for 1990, taking away the electronic clutches and the gear ratio of mandatory 320 maximum really affected this team because they were running on a 290 gear and they had that electronic clutch dialed in. Lee Beard was definitely hurt by that move.
And he's very glad it's a long, long season as they hope to get a handle on it. In the near lane, pre-staged, is the car dealer from Roseville, California, Gary Ormsby. Far lane, Frank Bradley, the winner of the California Nationals last season. They're ready, and they're away. Ormsby with an early lead. Ormsby has problems. Bradley goes on to win it. 5:08, 275 miles per hour. 2 rounds in a row. Bradley has found himself behind, only to have his opponents blow up.
On Frank for that start. He looked like the Ormsby of 1989, and it looked like he was going to hold on to it till evidently he must have had a lean-out jet that turned on because the engine was charging just fine, and all of a sudden you see a lot of smoke come out of the pipe, indicating a blown piston. And of course, Bradley just charged on to win the race.
Trying to do his burnout, and I tell you, Big Daddy, this is going to be a good race between this pair.
Well, you can bet it is. This is the first time that Joe Amato has heard his engine run. They did not get a chance to fire it early in the pits to check it out. However, Gene Snow, he did start his, so he knows his is all right. So Joe is listening to his engine for the very first time right now.
All right, he put some revs into it. Everything seems to work on his burnout, so he's gone that far. And now let's go to Steve Evans at the far end, who's had a closer look at Lorie Johns' engine.
Brock, Don Garlitz, here's
might lose their combination, and this could be a problem for the next round.
Well, there's a man, Tim Richards, who can tell them what it's like to have to build a motor between rounds. He just accomplished that feat along with the crew.
for Joe Amato. And, boy, I tell you, Don, this engine sounds stout. I mean, it's hitting on all 8 cylinders. There's nothing wrong with Joe Amato's power plant. Amato, a 2-time Winston champion in Top Fuel, a very successful businessman, the auto parts world from Old Forge, Pennsylvania. And he treats Tim Richards like the boss at the racetrack, even though he's Joe's employee. That's that relationship. Gene Snow, ever the innovator and tinkerer, some would say, from Fort Worth, Texas. Just ask his crew chief, Chris Eckert, who occasionally will lock him in the trailer to keep him from messing with a good combination.
You can bet right about now Joe Amato's really feeling good. I know as a driver, after you've made your burnout on a brand new engine and you feel that baby thumping, you really feel good about it.
You can just tell by the way it's rocking on the tires.
Yes, you can.
All right, here it is, Snow and Amato. Amato near lane, Snow, Amato raw fuel coming out of the engine in the far lane. It's a beautiful start. It's a beautiful drag race. Oh, boy, Jerry Amato and White had to look at the wind lights twice to make sure they had done it. A 5:02 for Amato, a 5:07 for Gene Snow. Let's go to Brock at the starting line.
Well, Tim, a 5:02, what do you think this time of day? You happy?
I'm happy with it. We're pretty concerned. And when you have to change the motor, you think it's the same, but you never know for sure. And we're happy over the 5:02.
Good. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Okay, Tim Richards, happy man.
Well, I have to give congratulations to both teams. 5:07 and a 5:02 is very respectful for brand new engines. Both drivers did an excellent job. Snow took a little starting line advantage, but the Tim Richards prepared motor was a little stronger. What can I say? It makes Amato the winner.
Had a great drag race. Matter of about a half a car length decides it. And that will put Joe Amato into the Top Fuel semifinals against Kenny Bernstein, with Amato enjoying the lane choice.
Any doubt we may have had about the quality of the 2 power plants in that drag race was quickly dispelled. Your 5:02, his 5:07, both were strong.
Well, that was nice to make an engine change like that and be able to go out and run a 5:02. That's a credit to the crew of both teams.
So many competitors have complete spare engines. You guys build yours from a bare block. Why?
Well, our combination we're running right now is a little different, Steve, than what we normally been running. So the engine that was in the trailer that was all assembled was different than the one we raced with. So we wanted to, Timmy took the block and took the motor apart and actually built the bare block from ground up to make it the same as we're running them 4s with it.
That's a lot of confidence to do that in the amount of time you have.
And we didn't even start it up before we could go out there to race, so that's a real lot of confidence.
Semi-final bound is Joe Amato.
And the beautiful part, it's all still in one piece.
All right, we'll see Amato against Bernstein later, but right
Mr.
now...
Toner shut it off early. This is a brand new one. Let's get a jet reading.
Boy, what would it have run had she extended it all the way to the finish line? All right, who's going to race Lorie Johns in the final round?
Well, it's going to be interesting. Joe Amato versus Kenny Bernstein. Here comes Bernstein to the line with that red and white automobile of his. He is in pretty decent shape, having had no major mechanical problems this day. On the other hand, his opponent, Joe Amato, had to change engines earlier. So as these two guys get ready for their burnouts, let's go to Steve. Right, Steve, and here are a couple of guys getting ready. That is Dale Armstrong guiding his longtime partner in crime, as it were, Kenny Bernstein, into the staging lights. And on the other side, his opponent, Joe Amato. What do you think, Don Garlitz?
I think they're ready also. Both these teams are up to the challenge.
This is the best performance by Kenny Bernstein since he joined the Top Fuel category at the beginning of the season. Amato in the near lane. It is Bernstein with a beautiful hole shot, but it's not enough to match wheels with Amato. His crew celebrates a 499. They match the number of Lorie Johns. If you carry it out to the thousands, however, they have lost lane choice to the young lady from Texas.
Beautiful start by Bernstein. Takes a nice advantage, but Amato's car moves quickly as the Richards power comes on, and you can see him just train lengthing right there in the middle of the course, completely out in front of Bernstein by the end with a fantastic 282-mile-an-hour top speed.
Okay, there's your Top Fuel finalists, Johns and Amato. Johns with a lane choice by 6 thousandths.
For the second NHRA national event in a row, the same Top Fuel finalists, Lorie Johns and you, Joe Amato, both ran 499.
Who has lane choice?
I knew you were going to ask that. She does.
Well, you know, both lanes look pretty good, Steve. I guess we'll just have to...
The guy always says that when he doesn't get lane choice.
That's a standard story, right? But you know, we're just glad to be in the final, you know. It's been a tough race, and the teams are all running good right now. So it'll be 2 times now and we're in the final against Lorie, so maybe we can reverse the outcome in the last race. But we'll have us a good drag race either way.
We'll be watching very closely. 16 cars began the war in the top fuel racer category. It is now boiled down to 2, the finalists. We're in the pit area of Joe Amato as his crew, as always, very quietly, very methodically disassembles this engine to examine every single nut, bolt, spark plug, and bearing. And over in the Lorie.
Okay, 600 cars showed up here in Memphis, and now 2 are left. That is Jerry Amato guiding her husband back into the staging lanes for the top fuel final. Over there in the far lane, Lorie Johns, her crew, Larry Meyer guiding her into position. She has been a major surprise this season, and a lady who has traveled with her through the campaign is her mother, Steve. All right. Right now, it's up to her daughter, who has lane choice, Don Garlitz, by a mere 6/1000ths of a second here against Joe Amato.
And even though the lanes are practically even, it's still an advantage.
Amato loses traction. Lorie Johns crew with her fists in the air, and why not? 5 seconds flat. 270 miles per hour. What was that Julia Johns said about settling down and being much calmer now when they win their next race? Julia, you told a little white lie. Down there in the celebration is Brock Yates.
Eddie Don Garlitz. Thank you, Brock. I'm here in Gary Ormsby's pit, and you're absolutely right. The clutch is the #1 problem facing these fuel cars this year, and more specifically, the clutch management system. Teams like Gary Ormsby and Bruce Larson have made some good runs, but they have not demonstrated the consistency that they had last year with those electronic systems that gave you the same thing every time. You see, NHRA at the beginning of the year took the electronics off and made you put hydraulic pneumatic systems on the cars. Well, that has been a problem. A little later in the show, I'm going to show you a couple of these systems and just how they work and what the problems have been with them. But right now, let's go to Pro
It'll be
Stock.
interesting to watch when we get to round 2 of funny car. But now we've got the kings of the sport, the fastest breed of them all, top fuel dragsters. Round number 2, Gary Ormsby, the reigning Winston champion, is the first to smoke the tires, the red, green, and white car.
And he'll be facing Jack Ostrander, who has been running extremely well here today, Steve.
Absolutely. He has no big corporate sponsorship. The last time I checked, he was a bartender at a bowling alley in Michigan. But boy, he's flying.
Well, you know, Steve, the unsponsored cars that don't have the high-dollar parts are faring quite well here today. And these races, a lot of them are being determined by the reaction time of the driver, because almost all cars are equal on this slick surface.
You know, you can kind of compare drag racing to, let's say, a track meet. The runners have to react to the crack of the starter's pistol. If one is a little slower reacting, he's going to have to run harder to catch the leader. Same thing in drag racing, only here it's visual. You've got to react to the yellow light on that Christmas tree. The lanes are independently timed, and the clock starts when the wheels move, not when the light turns green.
Some of them even have those special glasses to enhance the yellow.
In fact, this man has worn them. Gary Ormsby, Auburn, California, as we said, the defending Winston champ, not smiling as broadly as he was most of last year. Lee Beard is his crew chief. This is their best qualifying effort all season long at 5:06 in the number 2 spot. Jack Ostrander, Pontiac, Michigan. Jack, got to be pleased to be here in round number 2 against this kind of competition. And Mike Shelley is one of the reasons that he qualified number 10 at a nice 5:21. So it's time for the 2 to get together. And as always in drag racing, there's no second chances. The winner goes forward, the loser goes in the box.
Well, you know, the big thing facing these guys is that clutch management system. If they can just keep those tires from spinning, the cars will run pretty good, but that has really been a problem here today, Steve.
That's right. Usually, if you smoke the tires, you lose. Staged and ready. Oh, Ormsby with a tremendous hole shot, something he's famous for. A little engine problems possibly for Ostrander. Ormsby, 5:24. Ostrander quicker at 5:22, but the car just didn't leave with Ormsby's mount. 275 miles per hour, the winning speed.
Here we see the remarkable reaction time of Gary Ormsby. Last year, he was a killer, and it looks like the old Ormsby back again. We noticed a tiny little bit of smoke off of Ostrander's tires, and he was actually had the more powerful car, but could not catch and make up the difference. On your screen in parentheses is the reaction time. 0.467 for Ormsby, a 0.400 is a perfect light. Ostrander's 0.517, a full half a tenth slow.
That was a pretty close drag race.
Closer than I like it right there, I'll tell you.
Did you know you got there first?
I thought I did, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't absolutely sure.
Great driving. You ran 200 slower and still beat him.
Yeah, it was close. I was a little off myself, I thought, on the starting line. In fact, I was wondering about when I could see him about half-track down there. I wondered if I was a little later, and I thought...
Good driving there.
Thank you, Steve.
Hard to believe that a run of a little over 5 seconds can take your breath away. But
a Gary Ormsby or a Joe Amato to maybe sneak by her here. Top fuel continuing. Gene Snow, who qualified number 9 and beat Jim Head in round number 1, will be up against Joe Amato, the two-time Winston champ, who qualified number 1 at 5:03. There's the Snowman, formerly a car dealer, now a very successful oil producer out of Fort Worth, Texas. Chris Eckert is his crew chief. They have really found a steady combination. It just needs to go a little bit quicker. Joe Amato, well, if he went any quicker, he'd be in the 4s. One of the few tracks that the 4-second barrier has not been broken on is here at State Capitol. Tim Richards would like to change all of that if he possibly could right now. But I don't think that's possible, Don.
Well, I don't know. 5:03 is what he qualified, and we know that it's in there. 4:99 is not that far away. However, it is a hot afternoon, but Tim Richards is the master of getting the most horsepower out of one of these Hemi engines.
Don't get me wrong, I'd love to see, more importantly, this crowd would love to see a big 4 flash up on the Baton Rouge scoreboards. Joe Amato has red-lighted. He has eliminated himself, but I don't think he knows it. Look how hard he's driving that car. This is incredible. Let's go to Brock Yates with the winning crew chief at the starting line.
Well, Chris, Amato had a chance to gain the points and didn't do it. As we watch the replay, Amato left just a split second too soon, but with the new glasses that they wear and the way the helmets are made, I doubt seriously he ever saw the red light. Plus, Gene Snow also smoked the tires. He almost crossed the center line. If he hadn't, it would have been the worst of the 2 infractions, and Joe Amato would have been reinstated and put back into the race.
I can only hope that Joe Amato saw his red light, because I'd hate to be the one to tell him. Well, by that look, he obviously did not see it.
Didn't see it? No. I red lighted, really?
Indeed. That hasn't happened in years.
No, I was pushing for a good tree, and I guess I just overpushed it, you know.
Somebody said one time if the driver doesn't red light every once in a while, he's just not driving hard enough.
Well, there's a lot of pressure on us because the cars are so close, you know, but, you know, it was our chance to make a move in the championship, and I guess I fumbled, you know, what can I say?
Sorry to be the bearer of bad tidings.
We'll be back.
Joe obviously referring to the fact that Lorie Johns went out in round number 1, which gave him a chance to catch up. Well, I'll tell you what, here's a couple of guys that are only going to get one take. Michael Brotherton and Gary Ormsby. One of these guys goes on to the Top Fuel Finals. The other one heads home to the next drag race.
I'll tell you, Gary Ormsby would like to look at the next week's National Dragster in the Winston points column and see that he had moved up near the top. If he's going to defend his title successfully, that's got to start to happen. This is the Ormsby car. He's been cutting great lights all day long. Part of that's driver and part of it's car. Lee Beard has his car set up, Don Garlix, where it leaves.
2 very evenly matched cars here, Steve.
It's Ormsby out first, but not by much. But it's Ormsby in a romp at the finish line. 5:23 to a 5:32. Winning speed, 275 miles per hour. Let's go to the starting line. Brock Yates is with his crew chief, Lee Beard.
Well, a 5:23 as Lee Beard looks down the racetrack a little bit better. What do you think?
Well, actually, it was a pretty amazing run. It had a cylinder down right when it left the starting line here. If it had fired all 8 cylinders, it should have ran a lot better than that. We gave it a pretty good tune-up coming into this thing. We need to get in these final rounds to get back in the points lead, and that's what it's going to take.
That's good, Lee. Well, you got some work to do then when you get back to the pits, huh?
Oh, it's always that way.
Okay. Congratulations, Lee Beard.
But, you know, Don, sometimes if they run on all 8, they make too much power. It might have smoked the tires.
That's right. And this is a track where sometimes they've done that. But Ormsby did a tremendous job at the starting line. When the car went into this round of 5:24 to 5:26, he certainly didn't trust Brotherton. But Brotherton's performance was not up to par, and Ormsby easily outran.
Let's go to Top Fuel. Brock, Don?
Well, I'll tell you what, Steve, if Ormsby and Snow run any closer than those two, it's going to be practically a dead heat. That was about as close a funny car race as you'll ever see.
Well, that's the kind of racing they came to see, and that's what they paid. There's a problem on Gene Snow's car. The engine went lean. The crew member had to shoot a little fuel in the injector to make the engine pick up the fuel again. He could have lost fire, and it could have been all over right there.
It would have been all over had not the run. One of these drivers will soon join the winner's celebration at the far end of the racetrack. Will it be Gary Ormsby, or will it be Gene Snow? It almost wasn't Gene Snow.
Well, I'll tell you, when I drove these top fuel dragsters, a thing like that used to rattle me when the engine almost died and the crew had to run up there and shoot fuel in the injectors. I hope it doesn't affect Gene Snow's performance this afternoon.
All right, Snowman in the far lane. The defending champion, the man that wears the big number 1 on his wing, Gary Ormsby, in the near lane. He has not won yet this season. Ormsby with one of the best reaction times of the day in any class. It is Ormsby. A sigh of relief from his crew chief, a 5:15 to a 5:14, much like the funny car final round. Let's go to Brock with Lee Beard.
Well, Lee, I'll tell you what, we got to give Mr. Ormsby some points on that one. That was a great piece of driving.
Oh, he did a spectacular job for us all day here. We're really proud to be part of this Castrol team. We won in all 3 of the pro categories. It wasn't our team, the tune-up, that did it. My guys worked awfully hard today, but Gary did a superb job of driving. And that's why we're here in the winner's circle.
Under difficult conditions, this racetrack was far from ideal.
We've had some problems making a lot of horsepower in the hot air, and we need to do a little testing, get caught up in that area, but we're coming on it.
Well, it was a great show and a great race. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Lee Beard. We won here. Excellent show at Baton Rouge.
Well, Lee Beard rightfully gives credit to Gary Ormsby for a fine driving job all day long. And here we see him take a tremendous starting line advantage. But the power of the Gene Snow engine quickly overcomes that advantage, and it looks like he might go on to win. But Gene Snow starts into a slight wheel stand, has to momentarily backpedal, and that's all Gary Ormsby needed to pull the win out for the team. Now, as we look at the comparisons on the screen, we see how Ormsby won with a .434 starting line advantage over Gene Snow's .504. And I'll tell you, that's where the dragster won.
The reigning Winston champ has struck his first blow of the 90s. Congratulations, Gary.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to ever happen, Steve. It was a great job for the crew, you know, I don't know what we ran.
5:15.
5:15. I knew it was going to step up a little bit. And anyone that wins on this racetrack and under these conditions, they did a super job for me this weekend.
Gene Snow's car, I don't know if you could see it, but it lost fire. A crewman alertly got it back to life. He almost hit a single.
I saw the flames coming out of it back there, but I really didn't know what was happening. You know, I was just kind of watching my own car, but I didn't see.
Quite a drive.
Thank you.
We can hear the horn honking already for Gary Ormsby's crew.
What a great day of racing here at Baton Rouge. Some
team dominated all 3 professional categories. In Top Fuel Eliminator, defending Winston champion Gary Ormsby scored his first victory of the season, defeating Gene Snow with a great lead off the starting line. Snow's time was quicker, of 5:14 to Ormsby's 5:15, but Gary's quick reactions carried the day.
At this point, in many seasons past, we have seen some definition in the Top Fuel Winston points. Not in 1990. Consider the top 3 drivers are separated by only 22 points total. Earlier, I asked all 3 when they hope to break away from the pack. Lorie, 3 big victories, and you still can't amass any kind of points lead.
No, and it is frustrating. Not too long ago, in fact, it was last weekend, Joe Amato and I were on the news live together, and when I walked into the TV station, he turned around and he said, "How's your neck?" I said, "It's fine. Why?" And he said, "Well, I thought maybe it hurt from all that looking over your shoulder." And that is the way it is. It's a little bit harder, I think, to be number 1, but just by a very narrow lead, and puts a lot of pressure on. We really want to win today, and going into first round, we have Don Prudo, and I think it's going to be tough. So we just got to get past him and try to make this one work.
Gary Ormsby, you had to be a little worried until you won the last race, the Cajun Nationals, in this points fight.
No question about it, Steve. We've been struggling most part of the season, and that was a real lift for us to win that Cajun Nationals.
You think you could put a couple of more together and maybe bust away from this pack?
Well, we just want to at least stay up there. We'd certainly like to do that, and we've made some major changes in our combination for this race here. So hopefully that'll be the key to get us back on top and stay up there.
The worst thing that can happen is to go out early. You can't allow that to happen to you.
No, early round losses will put you down there in a hurry because everybody's so tight, you know. I mean, I think we're 12 points behind. Motto's 10 behind us. I mean, it's as close as I've ever seen.
Joe, so far it's been with consistency. You're giving Lorie Johns and Gary Ormsby a bit of a pain in the neck.
Well, that's what takes the championship to win for the year. You've got to be consistent and, you know, win all the races you can and get the rounds.
When you prepare the car for the first, the second round, you can't take it easy. If you go out there, you're in deep trouble.
Well, you don't want to beat yourself by smoking the tires, but you've got to also get a reading on the track for the day. Thank God we've got Tim Richards in the crew, and that makes my job a little easier.
It's causing these engines to have a little problem making a lot of horsepower. So the clutch setup, as Dick LaHaye just said, is extremely important. Now in round number 2 of Top Fuel Racing, the burnouts completed for both Joe Amato in the near lane and his competition, Frank Bradley. An important round of racing for Amato, because with the points leader, Lorie Johns, out in the first round, Amato, who beat Kenny Caretsky in round 1, could advance in the Winston standings. For Bradley at the wheel of the Easy Wider Special, he qualified 7th and beat Jim Head in his first round race. His crew chief, Junior Connor D, throwing the switch to turn on the onboard recording device, making a final check of the gauges inside the cockpit. The crew chief on Amato's car, Tim Richards, performing the same chores. And Bradley goes up in smoke the moment he hits the throttle. Amato advances to the semifinals. His elapsed time, 5.06. Quick time of the round so far. His speed, 277, as Bradley just coasts his way down the track. Look again, and you'll see in the far lane, Frank Bradley's car instantaneously going up in smoke. Obviously, something going wrong internally in the clutch mechanism that caused the loss of traction. Here's another racer with a big chance to move forward in the Winston point standings. We're talking about Gary Ormsby. He's got the lane choice over Don Prudo by virtue of a quicker elapsed time in round number 1. But Prudo, he's the spoiler in all of this, upsetting Lorie Johns in the first round, now taking on Gary Ormsby, who came into this race in the number 3 spot. The Skull Bandit Special of Prudo ran over 289 miles an hour in qualifying, then backed it up with a 288 in the win over Lorie Johns. Ormsby defeated Tommy Johnson Jr. in his first round race, coming from his number 5 qualifying spot. For Prudo, this is his first race where he is basically serving as his own crew chief. Prudo is making the judgment calls as to clutch setup and the engine setup for each round of racing. And already it is paid off with the 2 fastest speeds of the season. For Ormsby in the Castrol Special, he's trying for 2 in a row, coming off the big win at the Cajun Nationals just a few weeks ago. Ormsby trying to repeat as the Winston champion. And something goes wrong on Ormsby's car. Prudo is headed down track. 5.17 seconds is the elapsed time for Ormsby. What a disappointment. The engine having problems right on the starting line. Looks like the supercharger may have popped right on the line. Obviously, that brings an end to Ormsby's day of racing as he gets out of the car to examine the damage. Let's watch again. Keep your eye right here on this lane nearest the tower. There's the puff of flame, and that is the backfire through the supercharger. Prudo at this point is under power and headed to the finish line. No question about it, the snake is definitely back, and he has spoiled the day of both Gary Ormsby and Lorie Johns, and Joe Amato's just sitting back, enjoying it all. Let's go to the far end of the racetrack. Turn by Joe Amato gives him the choice of lanes over Dick LaHaye in the semifinals. Now let's go to the far end of the track. Either Dick LaHaye or Joe Amato. Tremendous competition in Top Fuel. Here is the new Winston points leader. Joe Amato came into this race in the number 3 spot with Johns and Ormsby going out in earlier rounds. Joe has now advanced to the leader's spot. Behind the last 2 cars in this round of 4, the best 4 Top Fuel dragsters here at the Spring Nationals. Joe Amato in the near lane. Dick LaHaye in the far lane. The winner here advances into the final round to meet Frank Hawley. 2 veteran drivers each trying to add yet another Winston crown to their credit. Tremendous racing. And
at the finish line by just a matter of a couple of 3 inches. Joe Amato wins the race. A 5:13 and 2:72. The losing time for LaHaye, a 5:16. And as we look again in replay, you can see that LaHaye tried everything to win this race. He got the advantage at the starting line, but he could not hold off the hard-charging Joe Amato. But in mid-course, LaHaye continued to hold the lead. It was in the final 660 feet that Amato was able to pull by LaHaye and take the win by just a couple of feet. That sets up the last race of the day. Frank Hawley against Joe Amato.
5:13, Hawley will have lane choice.
Well, it doesn't matter. The lanes look pretty good, but...
You always say that if you don't get it.
Well, you know, it's nice to get it, but I'm glad to be in the final. We got the points, you know, we're trying to win the world championship. We'll take the races if they fall.
A whole lot of points this man has already acquired at this race.
Steve, those points have catapulted him into the lead in the Winston Chase to John Force as we're set for the finals in Top Fuel Eliminator. Here is Frank Hawley at the wheel of Darrell Gwynn's car against Joe Amato, the number 1 and 2 qualifiers respectively, meeting in the final round at the Spring Nationals. The advantage on paper goes to Hawley, who had a 5:06 in the semifinal round. That gave him the lane choice. He picked the racetrack nearest the camera. Now, Amato in and stays. Hawley the last to come into the beams. A tremendous race. And what a storybook finish. Frank Hawley driving the Darrell Gwynn-owned Top Fuel dragster. Look at the emotion being released out of the cockpit. Jerry Gwynn, Darrell's dad, surrounded by the crew at the starting line. The elapsed time for Hawley, a 5:12. The losing time, a 5:22. In replay, you can see a very slight advantage that was gained by Amato in reaction times, but the power of the Gwynn dragster made up for it. As they neared the finish line, Hawley pulled ahead and took the win.
Competition, getting ready to go against Joe Amato. This could be a good one, Big Daddy Don Garlitz.
It sure could. These cars are very equal coming into this round. A 5:13 for Joe Amato, giving him lane choice, and a 5:16 for Frank Bradley. But we must remember that Amato qualified low with a 5:08, and that means he's got some potential there to step up in this round.
So I'm sure that Joe is thinking about that blowover of Don Prudo. Remember, his crew chief, Tim Richards, said that they are concerned about the headwind here. And now let's go to Steve with Lorie Johns, who fell to Chris Karamessinas.
Well, Lorie,
we're going to have to get it here one way or another.
Gather it up.
Thanks.
Obviously disappointed young lady, but still with 3 major event wins to her credit already this season. As we watch Frank Bradley getting ready to go, and from Santa Rosa, California, his last major victory was at the California Nationals, right near his hometown at Sears Point, California.
Joe Amato has won 14 national events, 2 Winston championships, wanted so badly to join Don Garlitz and Shirley Muldowney as the only drivers with 3. But oh, we've got a problem right on the starting line. That's Art Hayward, NHRA's electronics expert. Buster Couch gets in, kicks some pieces away. Art looks disgusted. Buster says, let's race. Steve Gibbs in the foreground is NHRA's competition director. He looks relieved. We're going to have a race, apparently. Some kind of just a minor little malfunction there for a second. And it is Amato over Bradley. Whoa, and Amato, Don Garlitz, you're right. That low ET of the round, 5:07 to a losing 5:15.
I bet that Tim Richards put it back into race after he ran that first round and didn't wheel stand.
Brock, what was the problem at the starting line?
Well, Buster Couch, who started 4 billion of these drag races, and I would imagine that was a little bit of a change for you. Exactly what happened to the equipment?
Oh, the pre-stage light, something's happening to it, and it stayed on. It just hung on. Well, pre-stage just means that you're getting real close to the stage line. Right. So I just brought him on into the stage light and let it go. Safe to run, I hope.
Oh, yeah, it worked out great. Great pass. Good job, Buster, as usual.
Thank you, Brock.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man, what a starter. A less experienced guy might have thought, uh-oh, problems, and shut those cars off on the line. Not Buster Couch. He just solves the problems, along with Art Hayward there. At the far end of Santa International Drag Strip, Frank Bradley on the right would like to trade time slips with Joe Amato on the left. Amato's not having any of that because his has a W for win instead of L for lose. So Amato goes to the semifinals as round 2 action continues, and here is the reigning Winston champion, Gary Ormsby, executing that tire-heating, crack-heating burnout. Ormsby will be up against Eddie Hill, who you can see is backing up, has already done the burnout. Right now, let's go down to the starting line. Brock Yates and Don Garland's together. Guys?
Well, Don, this is an interesting matchup. Gary Ormsby versus Eddie Hill. And Eddie a little bit off the mark as far as ET is concerned, but a lot of experience. And I would imagine, though, Ormsby's got to be tough.
Ormsby's running as strong today as I've seen him in a long time. He's got top speed to meet at 279, but we got to remember one thing. Hill knows how to go 4 seconds. He just can't remember. Maybe he's remembered on this run.
Well, it could be we're in for some interesting upsets here. That's the lane that the Greek was in, so let's watch, huh?
Yes, sir. This is the upset because, you know, anytime you have a delay in a race like this, it changes people's thinking.
Well, Ormsby told me, guys, that Eddie Hill can have that lane. He feels that far lane has a little bump in it that disturbs his car. Gary Ormsby in the near lane, right where he wants to be. A guy who raced for 25 years and finally achieved the ultimate, the Winston Championship in 1989. Eddie Hill, he's been racing even longer than Ormsby, and that is still his goal. He, his crew chief, Buzz Carter, his wife, Jana, Eddie's wife, Hersey, that's all that consumes them is winning that Winston title someday. But it won't be today. Eddie Hill loses traction even before the supposed bump. Gary Ormsby rockets to top speed of the event, 280 miles per hour, 5.12 seconds. Brock Yates is with his crew chief at the starting line, Lee Beard.
Well, Lee, this racetrack seems to be running in pretty good. You're running into a direct headwind and still a 512. Got to make you feel pretty good.
We're pretty pleased with that. That's a pretty competitive run. The speed's real good there at 280. We're really concerned with the racetrack. We don't want to overpower it. We're just taking it one round at a time here.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Lee Beard, Don Garland's had to be thrilled, though, to see that 280 miles per hour up on the board. Now, show us
Steve with Gary Ormsby.
You had a fine run at 512.
Yeah, I thought it was off a little bit. I thought maybe a little less than what we did before, but we had her a little soft. We didn't know what the track would be after this rain.
Looks like we've got a good racetrack.
Well, it is. It's an excellent racetrack. It took some more.
You'll give it some more, too.
So, Gary, sure to be a major factor in the semis coming up. As we watch, pair him up in the semifinals with Gary Ormsby. Frank Hawley has lane choice with that low ET between the two of them. Joe Amato with a 507 low ET so far the event against the underdog of the day, the Greek Chris Karamessinas.
Well, now let's...
Welcome back to the NHRA Le Grand National Molson from Saint-Air Raceway outside Montreal, Quebec. I'm Brock Yates along with Steve Evans and Big Daddy Don Garland. The scene here is the Gary Ormsby car being worked on. All calm, cool, and collected. Pretty normal work. Not so elsewhere. Let's go to Steve Evans.
Rather hot. I'm Steve Evans. Let's go down to the starting line and join Brock Yates and Don Garland.
Well, Don, Hawley Ormsby, two former world champions, very poised drivers, excellent race cars, almost identical ETs. What do we do now?
Well, I think that Ormsby's definitely got an advantage going into this round because the Hawley team over there changed an engine. They had some mechanical difficulties, and that's always a little bit of a kind of a handicap.
Right. Although sometimes they'll change an engine. I know you've done it and not run real strong, so you can never tell.
It does put an unknown factor into it.
The first of two races in the semifinals of Top Fuel here at Saint-Air International Drag Strip, Le Grand National Molson. And I tell you, I have to agree with Don Garland on this call. Anytime you have to change engines, as the Hawley crew did, it can be, if nothing else, distracting. You always tell the announcer, oh, they're all the same. They're never the same.
That's right. Everyone has its own personality, and Ormsby has been awfully cool today. Lee Beard has been doing a terrific job. It's just one of those situations where I think it's a handicap.
And there's Jerry Gwynn bringing in Frank Hawley. He glances over at the Ormsby car, notices that it's hitting on all 8 cylinders, appears perfect, but so does the power plant for Hawley as well. They've done a good job. And one thing Hawley did with lane choice, put Ormsby over in that far lane that he doesn't particularly like because of that bump he's in.
That's right. Every one of the fuel cars has been lifting the wheels just a little bit going over that bump. And let me tell you, that concerns the drivers, especially on these top-of-the-line cars.
And with a lot of headwind to boot.
What a drive by Gary Ormsby. Low elapsed time of the entire event, 5:05. Resets his own top speed mark to 281 miles per hour. Hawley, as good as he ran, 5:16 was never even in it.
That is Joe Amato getting ready to go in the second pairing of the Top Fuel semifinals here as the crew chief right behind him, Tim Richard, working on that engine, making the final adjustments. That's the Greek, the underdog here, the decided underdog, Don Garlitz.
Do you know, Brock, that this is the first NHRA national event that the Greek has ever been in the semifinals? I bet his heart is thumping like a young robin's breast.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because he's going to get a legitimate test here against the former world champion, Joe Amato. So if the Greek can put him away, he's on his way to some great things. Could be the upset of the year in the making. And now let's go to Steve at the far end.
Well, Gary Ormsby certainly just proved something to everyone, racer and fan alike. Not only is this racetrack very good, but as the day cools off, these cars are going to run quicker. A 5:05, low elapsed time of the event.
It felt real good, and we tuned her up like we said last time. We tuned her up a little bit. We knew we had a tough hombre next to us there, and we tuned her up a little bit for that round.
You got to be hoping that 05 will give you lane choice.
We really do.
You don't like that left lane?
No, I think the right lane is a little better, although we just went down at 5:05. What are you going to say?
You want to stay there?
Yeah, who knows? I'll let Lee make that decision.
You get used to that bump now. You and it are friends.
Yeah, as long as I can run 5:05, I'll take the bump.
Does that bump bother a dragster as much as a funny car? Do you think they're the ones that complain the most about it?
I don't think so, Steve. I don't even feel it myself. I know it's there, but I don't feel it. Yeah.
Gary Ormsby, what a shot.
Boy, it's going to be a good one as the speeds get quicker here. The Greek now ready to go against Joe Amato. What do you think, Don Garlitz?
Well, this ought to be some kind of a race. You know, if I was just sitting in the cockpit and I was Joe Amato, I would think to myself, this is an easy one, and I'd already be thinking ahead to the time that I was going to turn for lane choice with Ormsby.
The Greek smokes the tires. Amato breaks something. The Greek gets back on the pedal. Chris Karamessinis recovers to upset Joe Amato. It is bedlam on the starting line. Brock is there with Prudo.
For the first time in his career, the Greek is in the final. He goes against Gary Ormsby. Ormsby has lane choice. Let's go to Steve with Chris.
Dragster Playground National Molson. Gary Ormsby and crew chief Lee Beard in the red sweatshirt warm up that top fuel engine just to make sure that every nut, bolt, and fuel line has been put back in the right place. There'll be no leaks in the starting line when he gets ready for the final round in top fuel. But right now we have to accomplish the semifinals in the funny car category. And it's starting to get better.
Got one more race left. The top fuel final. Chris, the Greek Karamessinis, and Gary Ormsby. Earlier, Steve talked with both of these veterans.
Well, I think if we weren't running for the champions, Steve, I don't even know if I'd even go to the starting line. I just let the Greek have it. He's been racing for 30-plus years, and he's never won a national event. But we got to go up there and try to beat the guy because we are running for the world championship.
And it's people like the Greek that keep a lot of racers going.
That's for sure. You know, he's been an inspiration to me. He was racing probably 10 years before I started, and I've been racing quite a few years. And he was always my hero back then, and now here I am facing him in the final.
Is that man laid back or what? There he is, the Greek, Chris Karamessinis, and that beautiful new red dragster, and it's a good car, right, Don Garlitz?
Yes, it is. It's running as good as it ever ran. He's got a good team. You know they've sent him to the line. He's ready.
Third stage, the final battle of this long weekend. The Greek and Ormsby. Ormsby stretches it out on the far end and is the champion today. 520, 277 miles per hour for Gary Ormsby.
As we watch the replay, I just have to figure that Ormsby wasn't going to cut the Greek any slack. Look at that starting line advantage he takes. And then another thing, the Greek probably softened the clutch up pretty good. You know, didn't trust that track, figured it was going to be a little damp. But the track fooled him when Austin Coyle caused that car to go down with a 540. We had a track. And you know, he took that near lane.
For the first time in the 1990 season, Gary Ormsby leads the Winston points chase with that win light over the grate. Great job.
Oh, it's a good sound, Steve. It's been a pretty exciting weekend, really, you know, with all the adverse weather and everything. And
one you're glad to put behind you at this point.
That's for sure.
Tell me about your thoughts at the starting line. It was misting. You had your hero in the other lane. What was going through your mind?
Well, you know, like I said earlier, if it wasn't for the World Championship, I'd have just shut it off and let that guy win this race, you know. He's a great guy. And
were you concerned, though, that maybe you'd overpower the track and he wouldn't?
We certainly were. We were really, in fact, it spun the tires out there, and I had to back out of it. And we were real concerned about that.
Well, you had to lift somewhere on the racetrack?
Oh, yeah, I had to back out of it.
Without getting off the throttle, it might have smoked the tire.
It could have. It could have. It was spinning them. I don't know if it was smoking them. It was spinning them.
And the points lead is yours. You've been waiting a long time for that.
That's great. Thank you.
Did you ever see him at all?
No, I didn't. No, I don't even know what happened to him.
He was there.
A great, great drag race to cap a long and difficult weekend here as the Greek.
Well, Steve, it may have been upsets in funny car and pro stock, but in Top Fuel, the same two veterans who have been battling it out now for 2 years are still in the hunt, Joe Amato and Gary Ormsby. And they won't face each other till the final round. But before that can happen, they must get by two cars, Frank Hawley and Dick LaHaye, who incidentally both recorded better ETs in their first round performance than either of these two teams. So that puts a lot of pressure on the Amato and the Ormsby teams to step up the performance of these cars without spinning the tires. Pressure, that's what this sport is all about.
Indeed it is, Don, and we're ready to race now. Second round competition of Top Fuel, and two top competitors from Northern California are matched, including the reigning Winston champion, Gary Ormsby, against veteran Frank Bradley.
Now, Gary Ormsby leads the points, but we can see just how tight they are when you consider, as you look at these numbers, that each round win is worth 200 points. In Top Fuel, we can see a major remodeling of the standings here today. Probably not so in Pro Stock or Funny Car because of the earlier upsets. Both drivers coming back after their tire heating, track heating burnouts. Ormsby, as we said, is the defending champion. He also won the last race in the circuit in Montreal, Canada, just 2 weeks ago. Frank Bradley, he's currently 7th in the points, could make a good move here this weekend. The last national event he won was the California Nationals last year. He's been in victory lane here as well, back in '84.
Don Garlis, how does the track look to you today?
The track looks real good. However, the near lane, the drivers are a little afraid of it. It won't hold quite the power.
Well, both Frank Bradley and Gary Ormsby now begin the staging process as they very carefully position their front wheels in infrared beams when all the lights are aglow on the Christmas tree, and they are off. And it is Ormsby. Lee Beard, his crew chief, looks on. Gary covers the quarter mile in 5.03 seconds, 280 miles per hour to Frank Bradley's 5:04. The race wasn't as close as it should have been, Don Garlis, because Bradley didn't get as good a start as Ormsby.
Ormsby takes a tremendous starting line advantage, more commonly referred to in the pits as a hole shot. And Bradley tries desperately to make up the difference. But here we see just how important it is to leave the line first.
Here's Steve.
He ran 5:04. I bet you could feel him there.
I could hear, I couldn't see him, but I could hear the sound. You know, there's definitely when someone's beside you, there's more sound to it.
Great job.
Thank you.
Gary Ormsby, who went to the top of the class in Top Fuel competition a year ago.
On your wheelie bar position.
Well, a couple of the big names, Steve, have been downright negative about wheelie bars. So negative, in fact, that I've been considering wearing a disguise when I circulate around in the pits.
Well, Big, they laughed when you built your rear engine dragster. Now everyone has one. That shot we just saw was the onboard camera in Kenny Bernstein's machine, the 4-time Funny Car champ, yet to win in Top Fuel. Joe Amato has amassed a tremendous number of national event victories and 2 Winston championships, and in round number 1, he sent Jim Head home, wheelie bars and all.
Joe Amato, the low qualifier, matched against another drag racing superstar, Kenny Bernstein.
And Kenny Bernstein does not have lane choice here. That went to Joe Amato, who ran quicker than Kenny did in round number 1 and earned that right. And Bernstein, as Don Garlis said, may be concerned about this near lane where Joe Amato has put him. We're just about ready for a start. Round 2, Top Fuel competition. You're on board. Oh, something breaks in Bernstein's car. You saw Amato just streak away to 5 seconds flat, 281 miles per hour.
The lowest elapsed time of the day for Joe Amato, while Kenny Bernstein's run of bad luck in Top Fuel continues.
To go against Frank Hawley, Amato has lane choice because of his better elapsed time. Semifinal pairing 2, the defending Summer Nationals champion Dick LaHaye against Gary Ormsby, the defending Winston champion. And Gary has lane choice. Back in the staging, this is Don Cricky back at the Budweiser Summer Nationals as the mechanics fine-tune Gary Ormsby's top fuel dragster. He's about to head into a semifinal matchup with Dick LaHaye. Between races, the search for more horsepower never ends. But first, let's check out second round race.
Time for top fuel semifinals. In the near lane, Frank Hawley, a very short courtship with the Darrell Gwynn team, but he's already won 1 out of 3 drag races. Joe Amato had lane choice, and we find him on the far side, taking their time here. Neither one is staged. Finally, Amato breaks through. Hawley inches in. Semifinals, top fuel. Joe Amato ahead at half track. And at the finish line, a car length victory for Amato. 5:02, 2 hundredths off his best today at 277 miles an hour. Frank Hawley almost matches his performance, 5.05.
Back at the start line, Dick LaHaye with 4,000 horses behind him, ready to burn out. The better to get traction. If you lose traction, you lose the drag race.
Earlier I said what kind of pressure this sport generates. Here we see some. Ormsby has just watched Amato win his round. He must beat LaHaye if he's going to stay in the hunt. On the other hand, LaHaye must beat Ormsby if he wants to make any kind of a showing in the points.
And Ormsby is also revved up and ready. Let's go to Steve Evans with Joe Amato.
Only in America you were screaming when you got
America. You know, it's when you come to your home track and get to the final, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, you know.
What do the fans say when they come around your trailer?
Well, they motivate you. You know, they say, you know, we love to race with you from the East Coast and whip all them California hot shots, you know, because all these top fuel races have been strong from the West Coast. And finally, we've got someone from the East Coast that can carry the torch.
Joe Amato going to his 5th final round this year.
And he'll face one of these 2 men, Ormsby or LaHaye, ready for their semifinal run.
Notice how carefully they stage these vehicles.
And once they are staged, you don't wait for green. You go when you see yellow or you're late. They both react well to the light, but LaHaye breaks right off the starting line. Gary Ormsby thunders through at 5:05, 2:82. Dick LaHaye never really got to fight. It broke right off the starting line, and the supercharger belt is off of that engine. No supercharger, no power.
And no repeat title for Dick LaHaye. He's out of the Summer Nationals. The final round pairing is set. Gary Ormsby against Joe Amato. Amato with the lane choice. Area, it's a very serious business. Crew Chief Tim Richards, who engineers the horsepower for Joe Amato and his top fuel dragster, conferring in the pits as they get set for the top fuel finals of the Summer Nationals. Joe Amato will be facing Gary Ormsby in the finals, and there's plenty of action in Ormsby's pit right now as his power plant is adjusted to get the maximum horsepower, and there's the man who can do it, is Crew Chief Lee Beard.
The final round in top fuel here at the Summer Nationals certainly represents the 2 finest teams in top fuel racing today.
And out of the way has been completed down here, and it's time for the final in top fuel.
And there's one of the best, Joe Amato, ready to make yet another run at a top fuel national title.
And his opponent will be, as it so often is, Gary Ormsby. You know, the only people that can appreciate the acceleration sensation these drivers get are fighter pilots that are carrier-based that get that steam catapult launched down the deck. It's the only thing that even comes close. And there is Gary Ormsby's best gal, Susie Hoops. And you know what she's thinking right now? Go, Gary, go.
And while Susie looks on, Joe Amato's best lady, his wife Jerry, is an integral part of his crew. There is Jerry Amato as Joe backs to the start line after the burnout. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk with both these ladies.
Jerry, you and Gary Ormsby's best gal, Susie Hoops, are great friends. How do you 2 handle it when your husbands are out trying to beat the heck out of each other?
Well, we just kind of go up there and do our normal thing. We don't let it bother us. You know, we're real close friends, in fact.
And this never gets in the way?
No, not at all. May the best man win. That's all you can say.
I really like them, but when it comes down to the racing, that's it. I mean, I hope that we win.
What then?
Well, after it's over, then it's A-okay and you're on neutral ground, but you can't help it. Those claws kind of do come out.
And right now, the claws are out as we come to the moment of truth in the biggest race of the day, the Top Fuel Final. Steve?
Tremendous balance here. Equally matched crew chiefs and Richards and Beard. Equally matched drivers. Ormsby, Amato. The cars very similar. This is a pick-em final in Top Fuel. One thing that really is at stake is the Winston points lead. If Amato wins, he can take it. Gary Ormsby stages the final round of the Summer Nationals. And it certainly was no disappointment. Susie Hoop celebrates Gary Ormsby's victory. Gary retains his points lead. Don Garlitz is at the starting line.
Just how does it feel to watch them old men get after it like that?
Absolutely incredible. I'm so happy for them. Absolutely. To watch them work as hard as they do and they get the reward like this, it's wonderful.
A real thrill, huh?
Yeah, it's great.
Well, Don Garlitz, you said from the very beginning that that could be the matchup, Ormsby and Amato. You were sure right.
Well, Gary Ormsby takes his traditional starting line advantage and puts 0.03 of a second in the bank. Amato's car, on the other hand, begins to misfire a little on one of the cylinders. This highly competitive world of drag racing, that's a no-no. It allows Gary Ormsby to take a very decisive win.
Here's Steve.
Well, in the never-ending battle between Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato, this one, Gio, belongs to you.
Well, thank you, Steve. It was really hard. This was a tough weekend. You know, Joe has been tough all weekend. He's kind of upstaged us on everything we've done this weekend except this final round, and we're real pleased to win.
You'd run a 499, he'd run a 498, back and forth.
Exactly, and we finally run a 490. He runs 495, and that's what a tough competitor he is, and that's how tough this points chase is.
Had he beat you, he would be the leader.
That's for sure. When we knew that going in here, we wanted to win this real bad because every point counts, and that's 200 more right there.
Again, congratulations.
Thank you, Steve.
And of course, we would be remiss in not congratulating
two of Top Fuel. And this will pit Gary Ormsby up against that man over there in the far lane. That is Jack Ostrander. And when you get up on this mountain, there are no easy ones. Ostrander is always a good, solid, middle-of-the-pack runner. Ormsby has won the last 2 races in a row, but I guarantee he does not take the man who runs the bowling alley in Pontiac, Michigan lightly. You can see it in his eyes. He wants to win an NHRA national event. Gary Ormsby, he has won more of them than we can even remember. As I said, the last 2 included. So he's looking for the hat trick here in Denver.
A lot of pressure on Ormsby because, like you said, Steve, no one is counted an underdog on this mountain. Anyone can come up with a win anytime because they're just shooting out there like a shotgun trying to get a combination.
Don't forget, too, Don, that Ormsby qualified #1, but had a bye run in round 1. So he is sort of one down as far as development time is concerned here.
Oh, but you can see the flames come up first on Ormsby's engine. That means he left first, and he arrived at the finish line first. But what a race Jack Ostrander gave him. You saw the crew chief for Ormsby, Lee Beard, stare twice at that wind light to make sure it was theirs. A 5:38 beat a quicker 5:34. Watch the lead, Don.
Gary Ormsby makes his patented deep stage, gets Ostrander off the line, and it looks like he's just going to drive away. But Ostrander comes up with some horsepower in the middle of the course and actually catches up. And this is where you see that starting line advantage pay off. Ormsby pulls by for a very decisive win.
Oh, Don, in a sense, it's deceiving, though, because the numbers tell a slightly different story. Gary, a better reaction time, .419 to Jack's .523, although a lower ET for Ostrander loses.
Well, Gary, you're always quick to credit Lee Beard, your crew chief. You won that one with a huge hole shot.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't seem to run that well on that run.
It did not, a 5:38.
Yeah, I felt it was pretty soft all the way down.
Well, the Bernstein crew was just applauding on their way back to the pits because they have lane choice over you in the next round.
Oh, well, we'll have to try to get this thing to run a little bit. Our lanes ain't going to make no difference.
What do you think it is?
It's dropping cylinders. It's lame from the minute I step on it.
Well, that's usually the element on the mountain.
That's for sure.
I can tell by Gary's eyes that crew chief Lee Beard has got his work cut out for him.
Maybe make it run on all 8 cylinders for openers, huh, Don?
You bet.
As we go to more round 2 Top Fuel action, Joe Amato versus Jim Head. And Amato has won the last 2 races here at Bandamere in a high altitude, so he's got the combination, at least he and Tim Richards do.
I tell you what, if I had Tim Richards' high-altitude recipe, I could be richer than Joe Amato by selling it to the competition. Jim Head, Columbus, Ohio, Westerville, actually a suburb, graduate engineer, and applies a lot of science to his race cars. You'll see all kinds of little doodads and tricks on the machine, a very narrow front end, anything to try to get that ET down. They are pre-staged. Amato on the right-hand side of your screen or near lane. As Brock said, he's won the last 2 events here on the mountain, is the toughest competitor in the rare air. A good start. Oh, but Amato just pummels Jim Head. Oh, a 5:13.274. Incredible. Let's go to Don Garlick's whip, the man, Tim Richards.
Nice new fat track record. Well, this track is a lot better than it was. This is the best this track's been the whole race, and of course the air has gotten a lot better. That run, Head was scaring me pretty good with that wheel stand he had going there, but we're thankful to run that fast here. Thanks.
Remember, Don, 5:13 to be slow at most racetracks, but at 5,000 feet, that's real quick.
You bet. In fact, that's a track record. Watch Head's flames come up first. He actually stepped on the throttle, but the clutch did not react because Amato moved out first. Then a wheel stand by Head. If he hadn't had that wheelie bar, you know what happens when they go to the moon. But the wheelie bar saved him, even though it pushed him over toward the center line. But Amato, the class of the field, continues to charge.
Well, Joe Amato has just become the big noise on Thunder Mountain with the quickest elapsed time ever recorded at altitude, 5:13.
Tim Richards and guys, they're making the horsepower, Steve. Mile high, I guess we're a mile high and we're going fast.
Also, the clutch man is doing his job. The first time that your tires haven't been blistered, much like we just saw in Kenny Bernstein's car.
Yeah, we've been putting a new set of tires on every run. It's been just burning the centers right out of the tires, you know.
Not this time.
Well, the track's getting better. You know, it's cooling down, and Timmy said the track's a lot better than it's been all weekend. He thought Ormsby was going to run a 5:10 there, but he didn't. He must have dropped the cylinder or something. But we'll just hope we can get to the final here and keep going along with getting them valuable Winston points.
Well, you got to start all over again, Don. You know, track record, you completely forget that when you go back down to the other end, don't you? It doesn't mean a thing right now. Or here at Denver, it will be Frank Hawley versus Joe Amato. Joe has lane choice. In the other pair, a suddenly resurgent Kenny Bernstein against Gary Ormsby, and Bernstein surprisingly has lane choice. And now let's go to Steve.
It's onboard shot with Kenny Bernstein, Brock Yates.
Oh, it's fantastic. As we watch Kenny do his burnout, he will go against Gary Ormsby here in the final 4 pairing. And he has run very, very well, not in a little part due to the chassis changes that we've been talking about. Earlier, Steve had a look at that automobile.
Very, very happy with what they've accomplished.
What do you think about this, Don Garlitz?
Oh, they're moving in the right direction. That's the way I like to build these cars. Engines up and back. Let's have traction.
All right, they're staged and ready. Kenny Bernstein leaves with Ormsby. We don't see Ormsby. Bernstein didn't see Ormsby. The crew needed this lift. They've had such a rotten exposure to top fuel in their first year in the category. Bernstein wins it, 5:27. Let's watch it again. Both of them cut 4-1 lights. That's almost impossible to do for 2 drivers, but they did it. The Nitro Flames, I told you earlier, they'd be as tall as the wings. Look at this. They're taking their own light with them down the racetrack here at night at Vandermeer Speedway. Bernstein near lane, Ormsby far lane. Wow.
Boy, I'll tell you, Bernstein looked like the old Bernstein of the funny car. He needed every bit of that reaction time in ET to beat Ormsby, and it was very close.
Well, this is exactly what Kenny's talking about right now. Joe Amato versus Frank Hawley.
And you know, Brock, whenever a driver looks down there, especially like Amato, and he sees Ormsby's been put out, it just kind of gives him a little extra shot. He wants to go hard.
Frank Hawley has moved in. He's deep stage, trying to get a better reaction time. He gets too good a reaction time. Hawley, red light, stays with the throttle, but it's all over. Tim Richards, Jerry Amato say yes. A 5:14, a final round berth, and the points lead belongs to Amato. Don is with crew chief Tim Richards.
Consistency is the name of the game.
And today we have it, thank God. I don't know, Bernstein taking out Ormsby made us pretty happy, and we're happy to make this point deal up. And I think we lead in the points now, and that's what we're after. Thanks.
Frank Hawley is as bright a driver as they come. He knew after seeing that 5.13, his only hope was a hole shot. He gambled and didn't get it. So Joe Amato will have lane choice over Kenny Bernstein. Kenny in his first Top Fuel final round. And then there were two. The finals in Top Fuel is all that remains of the third running of the NHRA Mopar Parts Mile High Nationals. You're riding on the burnout with Kenny Bernstein, and in the opposite lane, you can see Joe Amato. Joe Amato has taken the Winston points lead. Kenny Bernstein has made his first final since switching from funny car to Top Fuel. It's a big night, Don Garlits, for both of them.
Boy, and I'll tell you, it's not a more beautiful sight than these burnouts and these flames under these lights. And how excited Kenny Bernstein must be. He's had so much trouble this year with this transition from funny car to Top Fuel. And here he is finally at the Mile High in the final round.
But first, before we go racing, earlier, Steve was in the Kenny Bernstein pits to witness an interesting...
to the car this last weekend, and it's worked, and Kenny's just so excited, and I am too. It's wonderful right now. It's the old feeling that we used to have. We love it.
What Cheryl is doing with that helmet is warming it up so that when Kenny puts it on his head, if the helmet was cold, it would cause that visor to want to fog up. And so this brings it up more to his body temperature.
And it's something that only happens at night. We're ready. The final pair. Cheryl Johnson looks on, toes crossed, fingers crossed, even her eyes are crossed, trying to wish Kenny Bernstein into the winner's circle. Joe Amato, the dominant car of this entire event. Bernstein with a magnificent start. Where's Amato? There's Amato. Kenny Bernstein with the leave of his life. Amato, 5:10, an unheard of elapsed time on the mountain at 275 miles per hour. Don Garlits is down in that melee trying to find crew chief Tim Richards. Don?
Strong, strong run. Well, the air is pretty good here, but we've lost too many finals this year, and we aim to turn it around. That's why we're a little slow in qualifying. We're just going to turn the way we do things around and wind up a little stronger than we have in the final. It's been a hallmark of this team to be consistent, but we've lost too many finals, and we're aiming to turn that around. We need to keep Joe king of the hill.
Well said, Tim, and an excellent effort as he put together an absolutely powerhouse automobile here at the Mile High Nationals for Joe Amato.
Bernstein makes one of the best starts of his life, but the car just wasn't up to the power that Tim Richards had produced. He ran better and better every run, setting track records consistently, and that's what it takes to be a winner, and he is the champion.
Well, Joe Amato has won the Mopar Parts Mile High Nationals. He's taken the Winston points lead. He's run the quickest elapsed time in the history of the state of Colorado. All is well on Thunder Mountain, Joe.
Steve, I'm speechless. You know, you ever get a monkey on your back? We got us a hat trick. Three Mile High Mopar Nationals in a row. What can I say? You know, the race has been... Every 4 finals, you know, when you get the 4 finals, you don't want to start thinking about you're going to get it again, something's going to happen. So it's just...
Tell us about the race with Kenny.
It's a load off my back, you know, just... I knew Kenny was going to be tough, and I think he left a little bit on me because he seemed like he wasn't fighting me, but the car just went out there and it went right down the track, you know. What do we run?
5:10.
5:10. God, and this Mile High in the sky to run 5:10. The Bandimers, it's a credit to them and NHRA to hang tough with this race, to stay here and run the race on Monday night, and all the fans from Bandimir come out here to see us race. It was a pleasure to do it. And my
Can
team,
you hang on to this points lead?
Well, it's going to be tough. You know, they got us and Ormsby seems to be we're away from the pack a little bit, but it's going to be tight right down to the end. But this team, Valvoline Top Fuel Dragster, and Tim Richards and my wife and Jeff and Jimmy and Wayne and all the guys are doing such a good job keeping the car running steady. We want to make it exciting for the fans. That's what it's all about.
I can never add anything to a Joe Amato interview. Just congratulations again.
A lot of credit to be given to Joe Amato, Tim Richards, and the team. They did a brilliant job up on this mountain.
Of eliminations conducted Monday night at Bandimir Speedway near Denver. This race saw the return of Kenny Bernstein to a position of a strong contender in Top Fuel as he pulled off a number of near-perfect reaction times to earn his spot in the final round against Joe Amato, who had run the quickest elapsed time of the race earlier in round 2. In the final, again, Bernstein blasted off the line first, but Amato ran a track record-shattering 5:10 at 275 miles an hour to win his second race of the year and take over the Winston points lead.
Now in Top Fuel, the fans are really watching two drivers, Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato. They well remember it was those two who wore it right down to the final battle in the Winston Top Fuel points chase. They also remember, as many of you do, that those two drivers here at Sears Point last year, well, they had no luck at all at the California Nationals. First, it was Joe Amato in qualifying. Dennis Forcell, 280 miles an hour, tucks right under Amato's parachutes and barely misses him. Then Joe, in round number 1, had one of the most violent and fiery engine explosions we have ever seen. Now, Gary Ormsby, he thought Amato's fire was scary. Little did he know that on Eliminations Day, he would find himself upside down, sliding down the Sears Point racetrack at better than 200 miles per hour. He was unhurt, but the car was destroyed. I talked to both drivers just a little earlier this morning. Gary, do you think you'll ever be able to put the sound of that grinding roll bar on the pavement out of your memory bank permanently?
Well, I've tried to, Steve. I know the first time I made a run in the right lane, in fact, I was beside Jim Head too. I mean, I thought about it a little bit, but pretty much I'm not thinking about it today.
Joe, what a shock it must have been a year ago here to look down at your hands and see flames licking away at your gloves.
Yeah, last year's first round, this year's first round were 180 degrees different. You know, I went up to one of the tents to sign some posters, and the guy said, at least you have eyebrows and hair this year. Last year I was up there signing posters, and I was burned up a little bit.
If you and Gary Ormsby survive the coming round, round 2, you'll meet in the round of 4.
Yeah, that's going to get exciting, you know, when we get down to 4 cars against Ormsby, because both of us are really close in the World Championship points chase, so it's going to be an exciting race. But we don't want to look ahead. We want to win this round.
A pair of world champions, Ormsby the current, Amato the former, and both of them challenging for the championship this season. Our next pair of cars already coming to life. Here's the guy that is leading the Winston points chase by just over 200 points coming into Sears Point. The Valvoline special of Joe Amato. Doing his burnout is the guy that surprised everyone up at Saint-Air in Montreal, Canada. The Golden Greek Chris Karamazini's driving the Strange Engineering special. This huge crowd is jammed into every nook and cranny of Sears Point International Raceway. There's a lot of folks up there on the side of that hill looking down on the racetrack, watching Jerry Amato back Joe into the proper spot. Amato qualified in the number 2 position at a 5:04, beating Craig Smith in his first round race, while Chris Karamazini's qualified number 10 at a 5:16 and beat Kenny Bernstein in his round 1 confrontation. The 63-year-old Karamazini's having the time of his life, never running better than before, and he's going to need every bit of it as Amato set low ET of eliminations in his round 1 victory over Craig Smith with that 5:01. Both drivers staging very gingerly. Amato in the near side of the racetrack, and a red light for Amato. Karamazini smokes the tires, but it was all over the moment Joe Amato red lighted. And there was no more interested spectator to all of this than Gary Ormsby. He's sitting right behind him, getting set to run Eddie Hill. As we look again, you can see Amato. He moved too soon, the red light came on, the race was over. For Karamazini's another big break, and those are the kind of breaks that can win races. Gary Ormsby, as he gets set to do his burnout, knows one thing. If he can just make the final round, he will take over the Winston points lead. His competition is Eddie Hill, who is just beginning to show a glimmer of the performance promise that Super Shop special has had in years past. For Ormsby, he qualified in the number 3 spot at a 5:06 and beat Don Prudo in round 1. Hill qualified number 6 at a 5:11 and beat Shirley Muldowney in his first round race. The crew looking inside the cockpit, checking the gauges on Eddie Hill's car. And you have to know, down at the far end of the racetrack is Eddie Hill's number 1 fan. That's Joe Amato. He is hoping that Hill can pull off an upset here and beat the favored Gary Ormsby. Ormsby going through the procedures to get his car ready. A good start. And Ormsby by more than a car
Starling wins the race with a 5:11 and 2:86, and the pressure certainly beginning to show on the face of Joe Amato.
David, we're with Joe, who just watched Gary Ormsby win. You didn't need to see that win live.
Well, Steve, it's a tough points race right now, you know. Just, I guess I had brain fade up there on the starting line. Just, you know, trying to get a good light and do a good job, and, you know.
No excuses?
No, just, you know, I don't know whether the car creeped a little bit or something, but, you know, the red light came on. No matter what happened, I'm in control, so driver error, that's all you can say.
You can bet Joe Amato won't be Gary Ormsby's biggest fan as he continues through eliminations.
Steve, with Amato out of competition, here's the pairings for the Final Four. It will be Gary Ormsby against Chris Karamessinis, a rematch of the race at San Air.
Well, Gary, the only thing almost as thrilling as winning yourself is to see Amato red light.
Yeah, I did see that, and I don't want to say I was happy, but I was.
Your car looked like it moved around right at the finish line.
It really did. It did on the first run, too, and the fact that it broke traction out there, it may not have smoked the tires, but it was spinning them out there.
Well, that's where you're making your elapsed time, is mid-course and far end.
Exactly. The car's really pulling on the top end, Steve.
Funny car excitement coming up next from the Motorcraft Ford.
The dirty old truck.
Of course, Steve, it doesn't make enough horsepower, and as you said, it's dirty. Here we are in the Final Four of Top Fuel. Lance Larson heading up the crew on Chris Karamessinis' car, diving in to check over the engine, while Gary Ormsby very calmly waits as his crew chief Lee Beard has placed him just where he wants him on the starting line. Ormsby needs some help from Karamessinis. He got it the round before when Karamessinis beat Amato. Now, Ormsby needs the win to take the points lead away from Joe. Ormsby in the near lane, Karamessinis in the far side of the track. They are now both ready, and the Greek loses traction. Ormsby streaks for the finish line. He is into the championship round, and most importantly, the Winston points lead. His elapsed time of 5:13, his speed 283. That 5:13 off pace just a little bit. For Karamessinis, the dream has come to an end as he continues his quest for his first ever NHRA national event title. Made his debut at the wheel of Darrell Gwynn's car and won the race. Steve?
5:13. Is that your crew chief being conservative, not wanting to smoke the tires?
That's for sure. We hazed him a little bit last run, and we're going to not do that this run against him, make a mistake and beat ourselves.
Well, if Holly is your opponent, you'll have to step it up.
Oh, no question about it. Well, we know what to do to step it up.
A little more clutch on the low end would be my guess.
Sounds like some more armchair announcer advice to me, Steve, but I think you're right, and certainly Gary Ormsby has got the confidence in that man, Lee Beard, his crew chief. Choice. The crewman on Gary Ormsby's car putting the final touches on the oiling system. They've been through the engine, getting it ready for the finals against Frank Hawley, the clutch man, setting the spacing between the discs and the plates. That determines how much slippage there will be when he leaves the starting line. Let's go to Steve Evans. Under the brilliant blue skies of Northern California, the one race remaining on the schedule of the Motorcraft Ford California Nationals is for the title Top Fuel Eliminator. Will it be Frank Hawley in Darrell Gwynn's car? Hawley has had the quicker elapsed times of each round of competition. Plus, he holds low elapsed time of the meet, that 5:01 he turned in qualifying. For Gary Ormsby, he comes into this final round the underdog on paper. He was 9/100ths of a second slower than Hawley in the round of 4. But as Frank told Steve Evans, remember, Ormsby is noted for his reaction times off the starting line. Down now to the final staging procedures. As they creep forward into the lights, it indicates they're ready. Buster Couch sends them on their way. And Gary Ormsby pulls off the upset. 5:09 at 278 miles an hour. Hawley was the car to slow. 5:11 at 279. Let's look again in replay. It was Ormsby all the way. 1/100th of a second quicker off the starting line. 2/100ths of a second quicker to cover the quarter mile. And that was the margin of victory as Hawley closed it down at the finish, but yet not enough.
1 year ago today, Gary Ormsby was upside down on this racetrack. Now you're just tipped over with happiness, really.
That's for sure, Steve. You know, we tried not to let it worry us a little bit about what happened here last year and about all the extra pressure of the hometown people and everything. And Well, I got to admit it was a little extra pressure today, but we pulled it off.
Talk about pressure. What about Frank Hawley?
Yeah, what happened to him?
Well, no, he was right beside you. You couldn't see him. But, I mean, racing that car, you knew he could beat you in a heartbeat.
Oh, almost definitely. He'd run quicker all day than we had. I don't even know what we ran. I just know we got here first, and that's all that matters.
You got off the mark first again.
Oh, super. Thanks, Steve.
Gary Ormsby has won it all. And, in fact, he has been voted the Goodyear driver of the race. Dave?
You're exactly right, Steve. Goodyear will be sending a check for $1,000 in the name of Gary Ormsby to the Scholarship Fund of the Specialty Equipment Market Association. It will be from a very good driver for a very good cause. In the standings in the Winston Points chase, Gary Ormsby moves into the lead over Joe Amato. Dick LaHaye third. Lorie Johns now down to fourth. And Gene Snow in the number 5 spot.
Reigning Winston champion Gary Ormsby won his 4th event of the year. In the final, he met the number 1 qualifier, Frank Hawley, driving Darrell Gwynn's car. Ormsby left the starting line just slightly ahead of Hawley and pulled out the win with a 5.09-second elapsed time, 278-mile-an-hour charge. In winning Sonoma, Ormsby captured the Winston Points lead from Joe Amato, who red-lighted in round 2. Further behind, Dick LaHaye, Lorie Johns, and Gene Snow. Warren Johnson continuing to extend his points lead. In the pit area, they're working on Joe Amato's top fueler. He'll be racing Gary Ormsby. In the final 4 of Top Fuel, we'll be picking up that action just a little bit later. With only a 9:27, obviously giving up lane choice to one of these 2 drivers. Either Gary Ormsby, the reigning Winston champ and current Winston Points leader, or the man closest to him in this year's series chase, Joe Amato. To show you how evenly these 2 drivers are matched, Joe Amato in the Valvoline Special got the lane choice by only 0.02 of a second over Ormsby in his Castrol car. As these 2 drivers complete their burnout, let's go to the far end of the racetrack, and Steve Evans' 1990 season is the first time in over 30 years of drag racing that Chris Karamessinis has ever made the final round. Lee Beard, the crew chief for Gary Ormsby, backing him up into the track's left after that long burnout. Ormsby qualified third with a 5:01 and beat Don Prudo in his first round race. His second round competition, Eddie Hill beat Kenny Bernstein in the first round after qualifying 11th with a 5:17. Hill was in the near lane in this second round race, and he left the starting line too soon, disqualifying himself, giving the win automatically to Ormsby, who ran a great 5.048. Remember the 1,000. Joe Amato qualified number 2 at a 4.98. He beat Craig Smith in his first round race. His second round opponent was the number 10 qualifier, Dick LaHaye, who had defeated Lorie Johns in his first round confrontation. In that second round race, Amato was in the lane nearest the camera. He had a slight advantage at the start and needed every bit of it as both drivers ran 5:04. 5:04 was a 6 for Amato. That was 0.02 of a second quicker. It gave him the lane choice here in the final 4 over Gary Ormsby. Amato has selected the lane farthest from the camera. Both these drivers know, the 2 leaders in the Winston Points chase, this could be a pivotal point in the series race this season. A tremendous start. Amato with a big lead, and something goes wrong. Gary Ormsby wins it and is into the championship round. His elapsed time of 5:15 at 280 miles an hour. And for Joe Amato, what a disappointment. His car running very well off the starting line. It charged hard in the first few hundred feet. But as you can see, he comes through the shutdown area with no supercharger drive belt. Let's look again and watch exactly what happened to Amato. His car left very well in the far lane, started to pull ahead strongly ahead of Ormsby. And then, at about 330 feet, disaster struck. A pop from the supercharger, and the day was over for Joe Amato. That sets up the finals for the second time this season. Karamessinis against Ormsby. Ormsby with the lane choice. Let's go down to the far end, and Steve.
Gary, anytime you stage with Joe Amato the way the Winston Points are, it's pressure.
It certainly is. We had a little luck there, looks like that time, but we won it, and you have to have a little luck to be here.
You had a little good luck, and he had a little bad luck. You're 5:15.
Yeah, it fell off. This car shook real bad on that run. I don't know what was wrong with it, but it just was all over the track and shook, and I thought it was breaking loose. It might have been. I don't know if it's smoking, but it was definitely vibrating.
See you in the final.
Thank you.
Before we leave down here, Joe Amato, apparently a blower banged.
Yeah, Steve, the blower came off. It was not a good run. It was, you know, I was ahead of him whatever part of the track, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, you know. Our racing luck isn't running too good, but we'll be back. We'll make a run at it yet.
You bet. There's plenty of time to do that for him.
Steve, 6 races remain in the Winston Championship Series after the completion of this Jolly Rancher Candy's Northwest Nationals. Final pair getting ready. It is Chris Caramassini's against Gary Ormsby. This race is a rematch of the Le Grand National at Saint-Air near Montreal, Canada earlier this season. On that rain-delayed race on a Monday morning, Gary Ormsby defeated Chris Caramassini. Let's go to the far end of the racetrack and Steve. Number 5. The finals in Top Fuel Eliminator. Ormsby with the lane choice in the far lane. His competition, Chris Caramassini. Remember, he had some problems on his final 4 single and was forced to shut it off as some blower drive problems set in, and they got them fixed. Ormsby with the advantage. And the mechanical problems continue for Chris Caramassini. In fact, he is on fire. The parachute is out. He's bringing the car to a safe stop as Gary Ormsby has taken his 2nd win in a row. The new supercharger obviously paying off. His time of 5:09.282. Standing up in the cockpit, Caramassini's ever the showman, bringing the car off the course, smoke continuing to billow off the engine. As we look again, maybe we can detect what went wrong. Ormsby had a slight advantage at the starting line. You see the smoke coming out of the headers on Caramassini's car. He had problems the moment he hit the throttle. As they went on down track, those problems magnified themselves as Ormsby headed to the finish line and the championship. For Caramassini's, as he watched Ormsby pull away, he felt the heat on the back of his neck. The engine exploded into a ball of flame. Then the fire died down, allowing Chris to get the parachute out and bring the car to a halt. So the Greeks sacrificed all in an effort to beat Gary Ormsby, but it was to no avail. Steve?
Obviously, the Greeks crew did something wrong, that huge explosion, but he's A-OK. The fire truck's over there, no harm to the Greek whatsoever, just to his wallet and his motor. But Gary Ormsby, you guys did everything right. 5:09.
Yeah, I ran pretty good. We had a little problem here, too. I don't know what it was, but this thing banged on me as I shut down there.
Really, you'd put a new blower on it. That's kind of risky, but something you had to do.
Well, we had to, Steve. You know, it didn't run. It dropped cylinders on us semifinals, and we don't like to do that, particularly in the final, but we had to do it. Just wasn't putting out the boost we needed.
I know you wanted low ET for those extra 50 Winston points. Not to be, but still a pretty good harvest.
Hey, it was a good showing for it. I'm proud of my team. They did an excellent job this weekend for me.
Did an excellent job for them.
Thank you.
Gary Ormsby, the winner here in Seattle.
And Steve, he continues to march on in his quest for back-to-back series championships. Ormsby extended his lead over Amato. LaHaye is in 3rd, Lorie Johns 4th, and Gene Snow rounds out the Top Fuel top 5. As the celebration continues at the far end of the track, in our opinion, the Goodyear Eagle defending Winston Top Fuel champion Gary Ormsby took the Top Fuel title. His victim at Seattle in a rematch of the Grand Nationals at Saint-Air, Canada, was Chris Caramassini. Ormsby ran a 5.09 second elapsed time to Caramassini's engine exploding 5:51. Caramassini's destroyed the motor in attempting to defeat Ormsby, but emerged unhurt. In winning at Seattle, Ormsby extended his Winston points lead over Joe Amato to over 700 points. A driver earns 200 points for every round victory in elimination. A single event, and that was his debut performance at the Spring Nationals earlier this year. Here he is matched against the new track record holder and the low qualifier for this North Star Nationals, Joe Amato, the defending champion. While the weather's been cold and damp, it didn't slow down Amato in qualifying. He had a 5:02, a track record, beat Don Prudo in his first round race. Frank Hawley, meantime, qualified 8th at a 5:14, beat Eddie Hill in his first round encounter.
As these two cars pull to the starting line, the skies are spritzing. It's like trying to walk through a thick cloud. You come off with moisture on your face. They get it on the windscreen. It does not affect the performance, and it is not an unsafe condition as Amato and Hawley lead the line. Amato pulls it out. His elapsed time, a new track record. 5.01 seconds, the quickest time ever here at Brainerd at 268 miles an hour. As we look again, Frank Hawley in the far lane got a very slight advantage off the starting line. He was actually ahead for the first couple of 100 feet. Then Amato thundered through with that brilliant 5:01. Remember, in the Winston points chase, if you end up the event with low elapsed time of the meet, you earn yourself a very valuable 50 points, and that's got to be on Amato's mind. He's currently number 2 to Gary Ormsby, the points leader. And this is Gary Ormsby. 4,000 horsepower, doing the burnout in his Castrol Special. Ormsby has got to be thinking about low ET. Let's go to Steve.
Well, Joe, you heard Frank Bradley's time. You knew you'd lost those 50 Winston points. You got them back with a 5:01.
Well, Steve, was, it's almost raining here, and, it's a tough round. Hawley's car always runs good, Darrell's car. And we got to get that round under our belt to get a shot at the championship and Mr. G.O.
You feel a little mist in the air. Doesn't it worry you that the track might not hold the power?
Well, they had to wipe the windshield and my helmet off before we actually staged the car. So
amazing racetrack.
It's amazing. It's got a lot of teeth in it. The cloud cover's helping, but it's fast out there.
See you in the summer.
Thank you.
Steve, while Joe Amato is obviously encouraged about the racetrack, so is the man backing up under the direction of his crew chief, Lee Beard. We're talking, of course, about Gary Ormsby, the reigning Winston champ and the guy that is leading the points chase. His competition in the Jolly Rancher Candies Special is Lorie Johns. She qualified 5th with a 5:10 and beat Shirley Muldowney in the first round, while Ormsby qualified in the number 4 spot at a 5:07, and he defeated Kenny Caretsky in his round 1 matchup. That 5:01 by Joe Amato just a few moments ago has passed the word down the line of these top-fueled dragsters. This racetrack can take all you can give it. It was just 2 weeks ago at Seattle that both Ormsby and Amato were in the 4s. Now Ormsby's got to contend with Lorie Johns, who leaves too soon in red light. Disqualifying herself at the start, the win automatically was Ormsby's at the starting line, but he thundered through to a 5:04, 281 miles an hour, just a couple of hundredths of a second slower than the record pace by Amato. Watch that far lane. There's the red light in replay as Lorie Johns attempted to get an advantage at the start, but left too soon, beating herself.
Well, I'm sure Gary Ormsby will be anxious to hear his elapsed time. He knows he races Joe Amato in the next round. He'd like to have lane choice on his side, but unfortunately, Gary, you will not. A 5:04.
5:04. Yeah, it shook a little bit up here, Steve, on a big end. I don't know why.
It ran real fast. Maybe that's why. 281.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It left good and everything, but it just shook real bad up on the top end. So we don't have lane choice. I don't think it's that big a factor. Everybody says that, right?
That's right. Gary Ormsby, great attitude as always.
Well, the lane choice is determined by who has the quicker elapsed time of the previous round, and you had the chance there. While Bradley is not in contention for the Winston Championship, those 50 points for the low elapsed time are right now in his pocket, and that's got to be on the minds of both Gary Ormsby, the leader, and the guy that's trying to catch him. He's in the lane next to him, Joe Amato. What a classic battle it is, the Valvoline Special of Amato racing against Gary Ormsby as they did in the Final Four just a couple of weeks ago at Seattle. In that match, Amato had engine problems. The supercharger let go. Ormsby went on to win the round and the race. Just before this round, Steve had a chance to talk with both the crew chiefs on these top-fueled dragsters.
Lee, in Seattle, when Ormsby raced Amato, you said something interesting. The drivers are so even. This is a battle between myself and Tim Richards of the Amato camp.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's obvious that every time we race them, it's a big round for either myself or for Tim Richards. It's not a matter of who does what right. It's who makes a mistake. In Seattle, we both made mistakes. His was a little bit bigger than mine, and we ended up winning. We're going up here with everything we can to win. Hopefully, mine will be a little bit better than his.
Oh, yeah. Everything we do here is based on what we think Lee might do in this next race. And his track record is very good to this point. I mean, we need to win more of these races against him, and it's always a battle on my part against the other crew chief.
Tim Richards, a final check of the engine, rarely showing any emotion, points to the gauges and tells Joe Amato to take it to the starting line. On the far side of the track, Lee Beard going through the same procedures as the crews gather behind the race cars to watch the action. Amato, the quicker car of the previous round, has selected the near lane. They're both staged. A tremendous start. And Amato from behind goes into the finals, and the first ever 4-second elapsed time has just been recorded at Brainerd International Raceway. A 4:99 at 278 miles an hour as Joe Amato and Tim Richards won that race. Gary Ormsby had a very slight advantage off the starting line. He parlayed that into a bigger lead by the time they had passed the 16th of a mile point. When they got to half track, he was still ahead. But then Amato came on like a freight train and recorded the first ever 4 at Brainerd and moved into the finals to race Bradley. Bradley, with a 5 flat, was certain he'd have the lane choice, but Amato outdid him.
Tell me about the race just now. We had to put the Wayne tires on because its windshield's got raindrops on it, but I just wanted to make sure I was steady out there. I don't want to be dumb and get a red light. All right, guys. We staged up and I left, and I didn't want to look over and see where he was because I knew if I couldn't see my peripheral vision, I just wanted to keep the car real straight and stay in the groove. And I did that, and I just looked over right when we got the finish line because I knew he wasn't in front of me, and he was right there. And I said, "Thank you, God."
All right, final round bound.
Beat that green machine, okay?
5 races remaining this season. Back at the starting line, Joe Amato getting his driving gear put on. His wife, Jerry, helping him out with the neck collar. Top Fuel coming up next. Nationals at Brainerd International Raceway. Only one car has the engine running for the finals in Top Fuel Eliminator. That is Joe Amato, the man that ran 4:99 in the Final 4. He was to have raced this man, Frank Bradley. But Bradley suffered engine damage in his Final 4 victory over Dick LaHaye that kept him from the starting line in this championship round. Just moments ago, Steve found out why.
In Seattle, Frank Bradley had the performance to win, but couldn't make the call for the Final 4 because of stud problems with the block. In fact, it was this head stud right here that pulled completely out, and that cost him the chance to even race. Here at Brainerd, he again has had problems with studs in the block. He will not make the final against Joe Amato. This time it's at the bottom of the block. The stud, one of the studs that holds the main cap on, has broken completely off. Now, this is the broken main cap that forced the engine change after round number 2. So Frank Bradley has got to be extremely disappointed knowing he could win. Frank, how on earth do you keep your sense of humor? I see your guys around here just kind of shaking it off.
We've been doing this for a long time, Steve. You know that.
Your friends came to your aid and got you to the point where you were eligible for the final.
Yeah.
Can't you borrow something and make this work?
Yeah, we could, but, I hate borrowing parts from somebody. And if you go out and destroy that, then you got to replace that. And it's...
you can't do it yourself. You don't want to do it.
That's right, yeah. We had blocks coming, but as you know, in Seattle, we had a similar problem. So we ordered 3 new blocks, and Joe was out of blocks with JP1, so he shipped us one in. And
well, I'm sure Joe Amato is smiling, and Gary Ormsby isn't. He was counting on you to take care of him.
Joe Amato is not only smiling, he is applauding himself as he comes up to the starting line. Frank Bradley is watching intently just to see what would he have had to do if he was going to beat Joe Amato. A great run thus far, and even quicker. Joe Amato runs a 4.970 at 273 miles an hour. Tremendous performances out of Amato. Bradley over to shake hands with crew chief Tim Richards, the entire crew. A hug for Joe's wife, Jerry. He knows it would have taken one of his best runs ever to be competitive against the North Star Nationals champion. For the 5th time in the last 9 years, Joe Amato wins it all.
I've got a good team. Team Valvoline, my Keystone, key parts, all the guys back at the warehouse.
when I can go out and win a race like this, it's for all of them, you know. But it's, you know, my wife, my mother-in-law is home watching the dog. I mean, this is more fun. Trust me.
It's fun for us too, buddy.
To watch us, and we're going to make a points race out of this.
That's 2 in a row here.
It's 3 in a row. It's a hat trick. Yeah, we've won here 5 times now, I think, since we started racing Top Fuel. I mean,
in a big Winston points jump for you.
Well, it puts us back in contention with Mr. Ormsby, and we want to make it exciting for the fans and let it go down to the end and really make it what racing's all about.
Absolutely. It's just going to get better and better. Joe Amato, the champion on this day at BIR.
Steve, he is making a race out of it as the Winston point standings now find Joe Amato trailing Gary Ormsby by less than 300 points. In third is Dick LaHaye. Lorie Johns is fourth, and rounding out the top 5 is Gene Snow. The crew coming down to offer congratulations to Amato and a big hug for Tim Richards. Definitely. There's the man, as Joe.
In the ranks of the Top Fuel dragsters, the battle for the ultimate bragging rights, just as last year, comes down to the man driving this car, defending champion Gary Ormsby, and his longtime nemesis, 2-time former champion Joe Amato. The good humor man of the drag strip, Amato's sunny disposition has lulled many a competitor into a false sense of security.
We're out here, we're real serious about it, but we also have a little fun and try not to let the pressure drive you crazy. You've got to kind of like take it a little bit light, but be real serious when you go to the starting line.
Balancing Joe's lighthearted philosophy is the team's crew chief, Tim Richards, a wealth of automotive intellect characterized by his usually business-like demeanor.
We'll just go our own road and do what this car is capable of. It hasn't gone anywhere near what it's capable of, and we keep finding things that are wrong with it, and we've been stumbling ever since we got here. But either we're going to find it soon or we're going to find ourselves on the outside.
The target of Tim's concern, this man, Gary Ormsby. He takes Amato's passion and turns it inward, approaching each contest with cold calculation.
Actually, we're in a little tighter battle right now than we were last year. If it wasn't Joe, it'd be somebody else, but we are getting a little sick of looking at Joe Amato all the time.
And finally, Lee Beard, the resident wizard of the Ormsby camp. Innovation personified. A man who fully understands the tenuous margin separating victory from defeat.
This particular race, you try to put your car right on the edge. And when we're talking an edge, we're saying like an edge of a razor blade. So it's going to be one of those days where you're going to have to watch every move you make.
Steve, the big story in Top Fuel is there's no car in Gary Ormsby's pit. It's in the hauler, it's loaded, it's ready to take the long trip home. In a surprise upset in round 1, Gary smoked the tires right off the starting pad, and an unknown Wayne Bailey advances to the second round. A situation that often occurred to me. He qualified number 1 with a 499, very powerful car, but that was under different weather conditions. Today it's hot. The track was not quite as sticky. They didn't take enough power out. They smoked the tires. I talked to a philosophical Lee Beard.
Well, anytime you race automobiles, you have to expect that there's going to be high points in your career and there's going to be low points in them. Today was definitely a low point for us. Today I just didn't know where I was.
Well, Gary Ormsby and Lee Beard both know as they leave the premises that this presents a great opportunity for Joe Amato to take the points lead. In fact, if he beats LaHaye in the next round, he will become the points leader. If he goes on to win the event, he will have over a 400-point lead in the Winston Championship.
And here are the current point standings after round 1. Ormsby, 11,990. Amato, 11,840. And then LaHaye, Johns, and Snow. It's to be tough getting into a car that you know that has a 50-50 chance of blowing up.
Well, one man who doesn't have that problem is Joe Amato. We see his crew chief, Tim Richards, backing him up right now. The challenge for Amato, just get this win like right now, and he'll take the points lead away from Ormsby and then worry about the rest of the U.S. Nationals. But the man who hopes to spoil that for Joe is a long-time adversary, Dick LaHaye from Lansing, Michigan. LaHaye has only won one event this year, but consistency has got him the 3rd place in the points. His crew chief is Goddard Kemp. Joe Amato, Old Forge, Pennsylvania, businessman, racer, wants to join Don Garlits, and Shirley Muldowney is the only 3-time Winston champs in Top Fuel.
That's true. Dick LaHaye qualified well here with a 5.06. He is very capable of putting Amato out.
And has had no mechanical problems at all, and doesn't have any hair. LaHaye overpowers the racetrack. Amato, 5:06, 275 miles per hour. Joe Amato has wrenched the top fuel points lead away from Gary Ormsby. Charlie?
Welcome back to the NHRA U.S. Nationals as Joe Amato makes his way out of the pits and toward his meeting with Lorie Johns in the semifinals of Top Fuel Eliminator.
But before that, Charlie, we have got a totally different...
Joe Amato against Lorie Johns.
Don Garlett, you won this Eliminator here 8 times. Does Joe Amato have an advantage as a past champion at the U.S. Nationals?
I think he does. It takes a little of the pressure off of winning the race. You want to win this race so bad that sometimes you make mistakes.
Lorie Johns has won 3 events this year. She'd trade all 3 of those for one victory right here today at Indianapolis Raceway Park. The payday would be worth all 3 of them, but it's not to be. Lorie Johns loses traction immediately off the starting line. Tim Richards, Jerry Amato, Joe's wife, they love it. Another 5:06.
And for Lorie Johns, her day has come to an end. Coming up, Frank Hawley and Darrell Gwynn's car faces most important win ever. Up at the starting area, a worried Darrell Gwynn is surveying the damage to the far lane.
Darrell's made thousands of runs. He knows what this can do to his car's performance.
Can the Gwynn crew overcome one last obstacle and make the dream of winning?
The top fuel finale, Charlie, is, well, just charged with emotion. In the near lane is Joe Amato, trying to put on some mental blinders to run his own race. Forget there's even an opponent over on the other side. Frank Hawley wondering, how is that racetrack going to be for this car? Will it take the horsepower? And over on the sidelines, probably more nervous than if he was driving himself, Darrell Gwynn with his fiancée, Lisa Hurst. One very special lane. Have a fitting conclusion?
I sure hope so. Darrell's looking forward to it, and he said that would be a dream come true for him, for his car to be in the winner's circle this year.
Don Garlett, what's going through his mind right now?
He's listening to the engine in his car. He can tell the difference between the sound of Amato's car and his, and he's listening to every beat of the engine.
Joe Amato in the near lane, Frank Hawley in the far lane, the finals of the 36th running of the U.S. Nationals. Joe Amato has won it. Joe Amato has won his 3rd U.S. Nationals title. Tim Richards told us before the competition began he had to find that something, that little something to make the car competitive. Obviously, Don Garlett, he did just that.
He certainly did, Steve. The car ran picture perfect, ran its best time of the day, 5:04, and he made a picture perfect start. Well, Frank Hawley was a little late on the line. I think he was concerned about the oil down lane, but the lane wasn't the problem. The performance of the car was just not up to par, a full 3/10 off.
And the man who wouldn't slow down, who set his goals, is the first one to congratulate Joe Amato's crew. And they, in turn, share the moment with him. And now let's go to Steve.
Joe Amato has won his 3rd U.S. Nationals. And, Joe, I've got to say that this was a partnership between you and this car all day. You're driving its performance.
Steve, this is Indy U.S. Nationals. What can I say? 3rd time. A lot of valuable Winston points. We got the points lead here. You know, my team, Tim Richards, he's a genius. I mean, he just did an outstanding job tuning the car and making it go down that track every time consistently.
Charlie? And a champion in his own right is this man, Darrell Gwynn. Win or lose, the dream is still alive.
The Amato celebration continues, Charlie, and for one reason, of course, is gaining the points lead. They're also looking forward to next weekend when the Winston Tour stops at their home track, Maple Grove, Pennsylvania. Bad news for Gary Ormsby.
And Steve, Joe Amato has been
one bit.
Steve, that funny car action will be coming up in just a few moments. Right now, let's get to racing with round number 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator. And here is Lorie Johns at the wheel of the Jolly Rancher Candy Special. Her competition is the reigning Winston champion and the low qualifier here at Maple Grove. This is Gary Ormsby. But while he was low qualifier, he no longer holds low elapsed time. As Steve told us, it was Gene Snow in round number 1 that took away the low ET of the meet honors from Gary Ormsby, and with it, the 50 bonus points. Ormsby, from his number 1 qualifying spot, ran a 5 flat to defeat Wayne Bailey in round number 1, while Lorie Johns beat Jack Ostrander. Her elapsed time was a 5:11. Because of the quicker elapsed time, Ormsby was allowed to select the lane he wanted to run in. In round number 2, he has picked the lane furthest from the camera. For Ormsby, he already has one major accomplishment here at the Keystone Nationals. He's gotten past round number 1. He was unable to do that a couple of weeks ago at the U.S. Nationals when he went up in smoke in the first round, watching then Joe Amato take the victory and the Winston points lead. As the 2 cars pull into the staging beams, Ormsby has got to be concerned about Lorie Johns. She has won 3 races thus far this season. Ormsby, a total of 5 victories to his credit. Both cars are set. Ormsby pulls away to victory. Another 5 flat, and even more incredible, another 290-mile-an-hour time. His 3rd consecutive run at over 290. Johns was close, 5:08 at 266. Crew Chief Lance Larson starting the engine for Chris Karamessinis. The Golden Greek, at the age of 62, as competitive as he has ever been in 30-plus years of drag racing. His competition, the most recent winner on the NHRA trail, this is Joe Amato. Joe is currently holding a slim points lead over Gary Ormsby in that Winston points chase. And the way the ladder shapes up today, by virtue of their qualifying position, both Ormsby and Amato could not meet until the final round. Let's go down to the far end of the racetrack and Steve Evans.
You know, Gary, I don't think any driver has ever run 290 miles an hour 3 times in a row.
I don't even think we did it when we had a 290 gear in it, Steve. This car is performing flawlessly today.
Are you running only as hard as you have to, 2 5 flats?
That's exactly what we're trying to do. As you know, we made a big mistake 2 weeks ago, and we're trying to eliminate that.
Can you get the bonus points away from snow?
Well, we're certainly going to try if the track stays good, probably. Hopefully, if we get that far, we'll do it later in the race, hopefully.
Get it ready.
The lane choice here goes to Joe Amato. He had a much quicker elapsed time in round number 1 of 4:98. But Karamessinis was close at a 5:07 as he defeated Michael Brotherton. Amato was the number 2 qualifier right behind Ormsby. He beat Dan Pastorini in that first round victory. After the burnout, Tim Richards, the crew chief for Joe, looking on intently, checking over that 4,000-plus horsepower race engine. They cannot afford a mistake. Every round is important this late in the season. Taking their time staging. The drivers making sure they're ready. Amato in the far lane by a car length defeats Karamessinis. Another great race. 4.98 seconds at 284 miles an hour. A losing time of a 5:04, 273 for Karamessinis. Only 44 thousandths of a second separated the 2 drivers. The 19th track and Steve Evans. He is with the winner of the last pair of cars, Joe Amato.
498.
We're happy. I mean, the car is pretty steady right there. We're not trying to go too fast to beat ourselves, but cars are running stout here. I mean, the track is good, the air is good, the crowd is outstanding.
The best top fuel racing of the year, I think.
I think it's definitely. The cars are quickest they've been all year.
This track is rapidly gaining a reputation for great side-by-side racing. In fact, it was a year ago that Joe Amato was part of history. The first side-by-side 4. It came on this racetrack against Shirley Muldowney. The second cars will battle it out. Joe Amato and Gene Snow, by virtue of the quicker ET in round number 2. Amato has the lane choice. Gary Ormsby goes off against Eddie Hill. Ormsby's 5 flat, quicker than Hill's 5:02. Gary picks the lane. He'll race Mark Oswald in the final four. Coming up in just a few moments right now, it is the final four in Top Fuel Eliminator. Ursi Hill backing her husband Eddie into his own tracks after the long smoky burnout. The crew chief Fuzzy Carter and the rest of the gang checking over the engine on that race car. The other lane finds the Castrol Special of Gary Ormsby under the direction of Lee Beard. Drag Racing 89. Gary Ormsby has selected the lane furthest from the camera. He had a 5 flat in round number 2. Eddie Hill not far behind. His 5:02 certainly proves he's in contention. Even Gary's crewman showing the tension of this race. Tremendous start. And what a finish. Gary Ormsby 5.01 seconds and another 291-mile-an-hour run. Eddie Hill at a 5:03 at 282. That win by Ormsby puts the pressure squarely onto Joe Amato. The lane choice here goes to Amato, but it was a very narrow margin of difference between his competitor, Gene Snow, and himself. 4.98 seconds in round number 2 for Amato, a 4.99 for Snow, but not to be forgotten is that 4.93 earlier by Gene Snow. Steve?
What a race, 5:01 to a 5:03.
Yeah, it was really close. You know, we still were a little bit conservative that run because we want to make the final, and now we're in the final, so we'll have to see what happens.
You weren't trying to run up 4.95, say?
No, we really weren't, Steve. We were just trying to maintain our pace that we've had all day.
And now you need Gene Snow to do you a big favor.
Oh, it'd help, yeah. It sure would.
Okay, let's go back up and watch that one.
Steve, those 290-mile-an-hour runs by Ormsby certainly help out. He can back off a little bit on the starting line. He doesn't have to be quite so aggressive with his clutch setting. Now, both Amato in the far lane and Snow in the near lane staging. The winner here to meet Ormsby, who's looking on intently from the far end of the track. Both drivers set. Another tremendous race. And it is Gene Snow from behind.
That's 200 points.
We need it. Look at the smile on Gary Ormsby's face. He knows the margin between he and Joe Amato is just narrowed as that man, Gene Snow, came from behind with a 4.98. Let's look at the finish line camera. It'll show you just how close it was. Snow by 16 thousandths of a second and a couple of feet put away Amato to advance to the finals. He will have the lane choice against Gary Ormsby in the championship round of the Keystone Nationals.
Joe, I know you haven't been feeling tip-top today, and that certainly didn't improve things.
Well, it was a tough loss. You know, the car ran decent, but Timmy said it looks like it lost a couple porcelains because some flames came out of the pipes about half tracks or something. Must in the fuel system must have mixed up a little.
Porcelain out of the spark plugs you're talking about.
Yeah, too much heat was in there, and it burned them out a little early.
You know, Ormsby intentionally ran about a 5:01. I think you wanted to go quicker.
Well, we were trying to just maintain our 4.98, so I thought that might be enough to win, but it turned out it wasn't.
Steve, this time it was Gene Snow running the 4.98 for the win. The Keystone. Lee Beard's crew manicuring that starting line, trying to find the stickiest spot to leave from. Over in the far lane, Gene Snow, who has the lane choice, is backing up into his track. Snow, the quickest car of elimination and the meet at a 4.932. But don't forget, Ormsby qualified at a 4.939. The difference between the two, only 7 thousandths of a second, and times are critical because should Gary Ormsby win this race and set a new low lap time, he would pick up the 50 bonus points currently held by Snow, and that would give him enough to put him ahead of Joe Amato in the Winston chase. Snow not in contention for the crown, but certainly playing the role of a spoiler as he comes into the beams. His crew chief Chris Eckert making the final adjustment to the car as both Ormsby and Snow now set to race. And problems for Snow. Gary Ormsby wins. wins the race. He does not set a new low ET. He goes 4.99 at only 274 miles an hour, indicating that he must have shut off early because his 4 previous runs had been over 290 miles an hour. Now in replay, you can see Ormsby gaining a slight advantage over Snow at the start. Then as they move down track, the problem set in for Snow. The sparks shooting out of the engine indicated mechanical problems as Ormsby was able then to march on to the finish line at a time of 4.99 seconds. Ormsby, the winningest Top Fuel driver this season, just clinched number 6. Let's go down to the far end of the track. Steve's with the champion.
Gary Ormsby finally with the helmet out. He tells Lee Beard that you blew the burst panel out and still ran 4.99.
Yeah, it let go about probably close to 100 feet for the lights.
You accomplished almost everything you wanted to do. Not quite get the points lead, but it's around 50 now. You're behind Amato.
Well, I'll tell you, Steve, that's a lot better than when we came in here. It was a great job these guys did for me this weekend.
How about all of those 290-mile-an-hour speeds?
Isn't that incredible? Just another credit for Lee and the job the guys did for me this weekend.
Take a little credit yourself. You did some fine driving.
Thank you, Steve.
Gary Ormsby is the Sunoco Keystone Nationals Top Fuel champion, and nobody happier than Lee Beard.
Steve, while the crew celebrates, 48 points now separate Joe Amato from Gary Ormsby. In third is Dick LaHaye, Lorie Johns, and then Gene Snow adds to his points total. He stays 5th. In the finals, delayed into darkness by a series of rain showers, Gary Ormsby notched his 6th Top Fuel victory of the season with a 4.99 second elapsed time at 275 miles an hour. Gene Snow broke a rear end on the run, ending his chances just a few feet off the line. With the win, Ormsby brought himself to within 48 points of series leader Joe Amato, who lost in the round of 4. The race itself for the championship narrowing down to Amato and Ormsby. In America at Heartland Park, Topeka. This race, like no other before it, has the story of performance. First, it was Joe Amato in qualifying, recording the 100th 4-second elapsed time when he turned a 4.96. But the big story is Gary Ormsby, who broke the 490 barrier with a 488 elapsed time at 296 miles an hour. Steve Evans was at the far end of the track to talk to Gary.
Can you believe it? The quickest time in the history of the sport at 488.
No, I can't. I mean, I knew it was stout, but I didn't know it was that stout.
And there were a lot of rumors that it was trick magnetos that caused this car to run 290. They're gone, and it runs 296.
I know it. I ran faster. What are you going to say, huh?
That means the tricks that Lee Beard has set her on this car are still there.
That's for sure. This car's ran good the last 2 or 3 races, and what he's doing. I don't even know what he's doing, but I like it.
And he slows. Here is the man that has seen his Winston points lead evaporate as Gary Ormsby, with that 488 in qualifying, has got low ET of the meet and the 50 bonus points that go with it. When you couple their qualifying positions, Ormsby has moved into the lead at this point by 6 points over Joe Amato. Here in round number 2, Amato's competition is Jim Head. You can bet his biggest fan is Gary Ormsby, hoping for the upset against Joe Amato. Now let's go down to the LaHaye playing a bit of a profit. Of course, Gary Ormsby has to run Lorie Johns yet this round. We'll see what the outcome of that race is in a moment. Right now, we're concentrating on Jim Head, who qualified well, one of his quickest runs ever at a 5:01. He beat Frank Bradley in round number 1. Joe Amato qualified 3rd at a 4.96. He beat Chris Karamessinis in his first round race. Now the lane choice here, going to Amato. He has selected the lane the furthest from the camera. His Valvoline Special inching into the staging beams, Head pulling forward. A green light start and tire smoke for Head. Amato keeping pace, 5:02 at 274. That puts him into the final 4. Joe Amato trying to win his 3rd Winston Top Fuel title. You know that Amato's good wishes has got to be going to this racer. Lorie Johns at the wheel of the Jolly Rancher Candy Special. She is tangling with the low qualifier and the quickest car in the world today, Gary Ormsby. Johns qualified well. She had a 5:05. That was good for the number 8 spot in qualifying. But of course, you got to remember that Ormsby drilled at 488 at 296. That speed almost 15 miles an hour faster than the rest of the field. Steve?
This is just a guess, of course, but I don't think Joe Amato and crew were even trying for a 4-second elapsed time, a 5:02.
Well, we're just trying to get lane choice. That was pretty important right here, and it's my wife's birthday, so we don't want to do nothing dumb because I'll get in trouble.
You know, you've been having some neck and back problems. Show us what you're doing about them. Down here with the oversized neck collar, if you would.
We went an oversized neck collar, which keeps the helmet with more pressure on it, so when I open the parachute, it won't let my neck go forward or if we get into a bad shake condition.
And also, you've gone to a smaller parachute with this nice long racetrack.
Yeah, with this longer racetracks, you can use a smaller parachute and the 1.7 G's on your brain and try and smash your head into the dash like it does sometimes.
How you feeling?
It's helping a little bit, but it's still not perfect. I might have to have a little bit of work done on it, but we'll be okay.
Yeah, you bet he'll be okay as long as he keeps winning.
Winning is the name of the game for Joe Amato, and he is now into the Final Four. Back at the starting line, here's a man that's got to keep pace if he hopes to maintain his shot at a second consecutive Winston title. We're talking about number 1, Gary Ormsby. Low qualifier and victor over Gene Snow in the first round. Meantime, Lorie Johns qualified in that 8th spot. She beat Robert Reel in her first round race. Now Johns trying to pull off the upset. She has defeated Ormsby in earlier events this season as she marched to 3 national event titles earlier this year. Both drivers utilizing all the time they need to stage those cars properly. Buster Couch, the starter, throws the switch and up in smoke as she hits the throttle. Goes Lorie Johns. As Ormsby streaks to a 5:04, 287. That could spell problems in the Final Four. We've seen cars in that right-hand lane smoking the tires with consistency. Lane choice could be critical, and it goes to Dick LaHaye over Gary Ormsby. The other side of the ladder finds Joe Amato getting the lane choice over Tommy Johnson Jr. in the Final Four of this AC Delco Heartland Nationals. Mark Oswald, the driver of the Candies and Hughes Ford Probe, being pulled into the staging lanes. We'll be ready with Funny Car Racing in just a few moments. Right now, let's go to Steve.
Well, Gary, I know in this tight points chase you don't want any bad news, but you've lost lane choice to Dick LaHaye. Your 5:04 didn't cut it.
Yeah, I was afraid of that. It spun out there a little bit on me. It may not have smoked the tires, but it spun pretty good out there.
Well, everybody spun in the lane. He may put you in next round.
Yeah, that's for sure. I noticed that. We'll just have to do the best we can.
Just another little problem for Gary Ormsby at the AC Delco Heartland National. To the race, we're going to be announcing the winner of the Goodyear Eagle Driver of the Race Award. And Goodyear will be giving $1,000 to SEMA, the scholarship fund of the Specialty Equipment Market Association, in that driver's name. This is Gary Ormsby at the wheel of the Castrol Special, the big number 1 indicating the reigning Winston champion, and he is in the lane nearest the camera, put there by Dick LaHaye, as LaHaye earned the lane choice by the quicker elapsed time, only 0.02 of a second, but it gave him the advantage here in the Final Four to pick the lane. A tremendous start for Ormsby, but look at LaHaye drive through problem, and LaHaye wins it a 498, 277 miles an hour. Ormsby, his slowest time of the weekend, a 5:10 at 283 miles an hour. Let's watch this one again. In the near lane, Gary Ormsby caught a 4:02 light. That means he was only 0.02 away from perfect on his starting line reaction. Just before mid-track, LaHaye had handling problems. He gathered it in, kept his lead that he had earned, and crossed the finish line ahead of what has to be a disappointed Gary Ormsby.
Well, Gary, what we've seen in that near lane, nobody could fault your judgment going up there with a 5:10 in the car, trying to cut and almost cutting the perfect light.
Yeah, Steve, we give it about all we thought that lane would take and what we'd seen in previous rounds, so that's all we can do. And I see the tires are blistered here right now, so I don't think we could have done much better. We don't know. They might run an next lane, but that's about all we could have done today, I think.
It's a wide open door for Joe Amato in his race with Tommy Johnson Jr. Earlier, Joe told us it was his wife's birthday. Steve found out more.
Happy birthday to you, Jerry Amato. What did Joe give you for your birthday, and what did you want?
Joe gave me flowers and a few other things for my birthday, but what I really wanted was to get to kiss Darrell Alderman.
Well, he's still in.
I know, so if he wins the race, I'll get to kiss him again.
I think Joe's got another present in mind for you, too.
Win the race.
Absolutely. Can he give you that?
I hope so. We're looking forward to that.
Steve, I've got one question. Does Joe know about all of this kissing going on with Darrell Alderman? Alderman, of course, one of the most eligible bachelors and certainly one of the most popular drivers here at the Heartland National. Tommy Johnson Jr. could be the spoiler. He is challenging Amato and smokes the tires. Amato thunders through the trap to an elapsed time of 4:99. Remember that. His speed 280 miles an hour. The time all important because it is 1/100th of a second slower than that turned by Dick LaHaye. Thus, LaHaye will pick the lane in the final round of the Heartland National. As back on the starting line, Jerry Amato celebrating her birthday in fine style, backing up her husband, Joe, into the proper spot on the starting line for this final round race with Dick LaHaye. A win here by Amato would extend his Winston points lead over Gary Ormsby, who went out in the final four at the hands of this man, Dick LaHaye. A final check of the race car by the crew chief, Kim LaHaye, as her dad rolls forward into the staging beam. Amato in the near lane, doing the same. Tremendous amounts of pressure being put on Amato at this point as he is striving for his third Winston title, where he would join two other drivers, Shirley Muldowney and Big Daddy Don Garland, both of whom have achieved that goal. The utmost in concentration needed on the part of both drivers. They take their own time, they're set. Tremendous racing. And Joe Amato upsets Dick LaHaye. A driving job by Amato pays off. 5.04, the winning time at 272 miles an hour. Dick LaHaye, a quicker elapsed time at 5:01.275. 4/100ths of a second was gained on the starting line by Joe Amato, and that is what made the difference at the finish line. We talk about the intense concentration needed to drive one of these cars. This was a perfect example. Amato's car smoking as it neared the finish line, but he held on by that much to take the title. Here are the numbers. The total margin of difference when you add reaction time and elapsed time, 18 thousandths of a second. What a tremendous exhibition of driving skill. Steve?
Joe Amato just gave his wife, Jerry, the birthday present she wanted the most, and you did it driving. Your 04 beat his 01.
I knew it was going to be a lot of pressure because I knew the lane was bad. I got out in the middle and started moving all around, and he almost drove by me. I didn't know who won. It was that close.
You saw him all the way down the racetrack?
Yeah, he was right there, and I got out down the track and started moving around. And Timmy told me right before I left the line to make sure I try and keep it straight if it starts moving around a little bit, and I just tried to keep it straight, and then he started moving on me when I was spinning the tires, and God, it was a close race.
You had to be holding your breath when you hit that throttle.
Well, I didn't know what was going to happen, Steve, but the front wheels came up and the car just took off like a rabbit, like my jackrabbit.
And all your lucky charms came through.
Jackrabbit in here, buddy. He pulled me one out of the hat here. Well, I won't get him out now, but Snoopy and all the guys did the job this weekend for my wife. Now she gets to kiss Darrell Alderman in the winner's circle. I don't know if that's so good, but for Team Valvoline and Tim Richards and my team, all the guys, they did an outstanding job keeping that car running good.
The only thing that hurt you a little bit was Ormsby getting low ET in that 50 points.
Well, that's 50 points. He could have got the record, and he could have done a lot more here. We were real lucky this weekend that it all worked in our favor.
Great job.
Thank you.
Great driving.
Somewhat subdued, but absolutely intense in his quest for a Winston crown. Joe Amato now nearly 400 points ahead of Gary Ormsby. LaHaye third, Lorie Johns fourth, Gene Snow number 5. In our opinion, the good year. Now the moment we have been waiting for. A hug for her husband and the birthday kiss for Jerry Amato. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Heartland Park, Topeka.
And of course, loyal drag racing fans everywhere know of the tremendous points battle in Top Fuel between defending Winston champion Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato.
Amato came into the Chief Nationals here with the points lead and padded that another 50 bonus points for qualifying number 1 at 593. Looks like nobody will take that away from me. Earlier today, in round number 1, both Ormsby and Joe Amato advanced to round 2. Also held, well, just a few minutes ago. And in round 2, Joe Amato, after having changed engines, maybe it distracted him, was a little late, and Kenny Bernstein drilled him with a hole shot. Joe was down.
Well, Steve, you know, it's tough. You know, we've got a main bearing in the motor in the last run, and we had to put a fresh engine in there, and we just trying to be consistent and steady up there, but it's a world championship hunt. Everybody's got to do what they've got to do.
Well, now you hope Lorie Johns does what she has to do to Gary Ormsby.
Well, you know, all we can do is pray at this point in time.
Well, Joe got even more depressed just a few minutes after we talked when he saw Lorie Johns, who had the lane choice, smoke the tires against Gary Ormsby. Ormsby added 200 points to his score and could leave here with the points lead. But first, he's got to get around Frank Hawley in round 3, still to come today. Hawley will have the lane choice. In pro stock,
Eddie Hill nosed out. Bernstein to advance to the final. Gary Ormsby knows one thing. If he wins this race, he picks up an additional 200 points on Joe Amato, and that would make the Top Fuel Winston points chase virtually a dead heat with 1 race remaining. Let's go to Steve. His crew on. Here's a guy that needs no urging. We're talking about the crew chief on the Top Fuel dragster, Gary Ormsby. That's Lee Beard out directing traffic. Regarded by many as one of the premier crew chiefs in this sport. This car 2 weeks ago ran a 488 at 296 miles an hour. But Ormsby has not neared that performance here. He qualified 6th at a 501 and beat Frank Bradley and Lorie Johns earlier. But for Frank Hawley, a brilliant 494 led to a first-round victory over Chris Karamessinis. He then defeated Dick LaHaye in round number 2. The engine change that we saw taking place on Frank Hawley's car, obviously not presenting any problems to this point. Most of these leading teams have multiple engines pretty well dialed in. They know what those engines will do. That has become almost a necessity to compete at this level. Hawley in the far lane, Ormsby in the near lane. What a crucial race for Ormsby. And Hawley from start to finish wins it. Darrell Gwynn gives him a wave. There's smoke coming out of the engine. They may have heard another one, but the 505-281, good enough for the victory. And Gary Ormsby loses a chance to advance on Joe Amato. Ormsby got a very slight advantage off the starting line, but the performance of the Coors Extra Gold car was superlative. As they neared half-track, Hawley had built up an extensive lead, and even though Ormsby ran a much faster speed, a 287 to a 281, he could not run him down. Let's go to Steve with Gary Ormsby.
Every fan that heard of the 488-296 at Topeka thought that this car would rotate the earth on this all-concrete track. It didn't happen.
No, it didn't, Steve. We were basically off a little bit all weekend, and we probably were fortunate to go as far as we did.
You made up some ground on Amato, but you really needed to beat Hawley to go away here feeling pretty good about it.
That's for sure. You know, I think he's somewhere around 250. I don't know exactly ahead of us, and that's a lot over one round of racing going into the final. But we'll see what happens.
Indeed, we will.
As we get set,
Frank wins it here in Texas.
and while Joe Amato went out in round number 2, he maintains his lead over Gary Ormsby. 254 points to be exact. It goes to the last race of the year.
And remember, Eddie Hill is the driver that Don Garlett's picked to be the spoiler in this Budweiser Top Fuel Classic. This is Gary Ormsby as he rolls forward to get ready for his burnout. On the available power on that engine, it worked for him this time because Dick LaHaye smoked the tires. In the future, though, he better find some horsepower. Eddie Hill looks like he may be having some problems. Maybe a valve stuck in his fuel distribution system because that is nothing but raw fuel pouring out of the right-hand side of that engine. This is not a good sign for Eddie Hill. Look at it, it's coming out in droplet form as the crew looks on and they kind of know what the answer is going to be. The word goes to Eddie Hill, cut it off, and Gary Ormsby gets the same kind of break that his Castrol teammate John Force did back in Indianapolis just a few minutes ago. A single in round 1 of this special event.
1 uses it to his advantage. Look at the time. 5:01 at a blistering 289 miles an hour. And for the man who had been cast in the spoiler role, he has to settle for a push back to the pit area. Now, out in Pomona, Don Garland.
Well, Gary, a 5:01, 289. In my book, that's called Back to You, Joe.
Well, yeah, we hope that'll hold. You know, we need that low ET of this event. I really don't think it will, but we're proud of that. We backed her off a little bit for that run, Don. We didn't want to smoke the tires.
I think you did quite well.
Gary Ormsby's 5:01 has certainly set a mark for everybody else to shoot at, particularly this man, the defending champion, Joe Amato. He's coming up next with Bruce Larson out in Pomona. We're riding along with Kenny Bernstein in his Budweiser Game Top Fuel Dragster. Kenny is one of the last two cars in this first round of competition for the Budweiser Top Fuel Classic. There is $50,000 at stake going to the winner, and you know that Kenny has got to be thinking about the fact that this man, Joe Amato, has taken that money 4 out of the 5 times this race has been contested. Joe's qualifying #1 reflects the achievement of 7 top spots this season, while Kenny Bernstein was only able to muster 3 #5 positions and 2 #6s, generally qualifying in the middle part of the field. He ended up #8 in this classic. Joe Amato pulls ahead and wins round #1, 5:04, just a little bit slower than the time set by Gary Ormsby at 2:79. You've seen what it looks like from inside the cockpit. Now let's look from the outside in replay. Amato in the far lane, Bernstein in the near lane. It was close for about 100 feet. And then Amato gradually began to pull away until they neared the finish line at the end of the quarter-mile racetrack, and a full car-length victory for Joe Amato. Don Garland?
Well, 5:04, Joe. You didn't get low ET, but you're right there. I mean, you're making the kind of performance it takes to win this race, and you know you're the only ones that ever won it but me.
Yeah, I know it's been tight. We would have liked the low ET is pretty important here, but it's going to get a lot hotter this afternoon, so it might be tough to get it, but we'll just have to take them as they come. You know, we're glad to get the win light, but we're really trying to concentrate on the championship race, so I guess you have to be happy we wouldn't get the win light, but we'll just see what happens.
The pairings revealed that Joe Amato and Gary Ormsby cannot meet until the final round. First, each must get past the final 4. And in those pairings, it finds Gary Ormsby against Frank Bradley with that brilliant 5:01, giving Ormsby the lane choice. Amato, with his 5:03 time, gets to pick the lane over Lorie Johns, who ran that engine-destroying 5:08. California, Jerry Amato, the wife of Joe, directing traffic as her husband puts the Valvoline Special exactly where he wants it on the starting line. The crew making a final check of the engine. Remember, it's got a new camshaft in it. The question is, will it work? His competitor is faced with a few questions, too. Lorie Johns exploded an engine in round #1. They had to put a whole new supercharger system in on that car, and the same question applies. Will it work? It's your work for Joe, a 5:03 at 2:75. He's in the finals for the 6th year in a row. At Indianapolis.
Well, Joe, anybody that would bet against you in the final at this Top Fuel Classic would have to be a fool. A 5:03, beautiful performance.
Well, the car's running real good. It's pretty hot here to run a 5:03 in the heat like today. We're happy with it. Tim Richards and my guys are doing a good job in making the car perform. But once you get to the final, it's anybody's game. You know that, Don. You're the only guy that's beat me in this race so far. Out of 6 years, it'll be.
But you got to keep one thing in mind, and you know Joe is. Gary Ormsby's already run a 5:01 on this racetrack. He is now paired up against this man, Frank Bradley, who last year was runner-up to Joe Amato in this Budweiser Top Fuel Classic and would love to get his shot at him again. Of course, now this guy, Gary Ormsby's got low ET of eliminations. That's the 5:01 we were talking about. And he says, I've got the lane choice here. Bradley was only able to run a 5:49 in the first round. I'm going to go in against Joe in the final. It'll all be decided by the win light at the end of the quarter mile. Bradley in the near lane. Ormsby over in the far lane. And it will be Gary Ormsby to race Joe Amato, but look at the time. Slowing considerably to a 5:14, 283 miles an hour. Gary Ormsby will give up the choice of lanes to Amato. Bradley's day is done, the victim of broken parts. It will be Amato and Ormsby in the final. The advantage going to Amato by 11 hundredths of a second. That's a significant margin of difference. You get a free copy of the video Drag Racing 89. Don Garlitz?
Well, Gary, something definitely not too cool. 5:14, the car certainly off its pace.
Well, Don, we slowed her down a little bit that time. We didn't figure the track would be as good as it was the first round, and we did back it off with our first qualifying run yesterday, although we didn't think it'd fall quite that far. But we did back her off a little.
Difficult sometimes to just hair tune them like that, isn't it?
It really is. You know as well as anybody where we're at.
Don, his time didn't fall off. It fell like a rock to a 5:14, giving a big psychological advantage to Joe Amato in the final of the Budweiser Top Fuel Classic. Coming up in just a few moments, California, it is the finals of the Budweiser Top Fuel Classic. Have Gary Ormsby and Lee Beard solved their problems? Will Joe Amato continue to be as rock solid as he has through eliminations? One of the quirks of this great driver is his superstition. It's talked about by everybody, the fans, the racers, even Joe himself. He wears a rabbit's foot, an Italian horn. He even has a pair of special Snoopy shorts. You can bet they're all with him right now. He just rolled too far through the staging beams. He's backing up, trying to get himself reset. Ormsby has yet to stage as Amato comes back into the beams. Amato on the far side of the racetrack. Coming forward the last few inches. He is the first to stage. Now Ormsby is set. And Joe Amato wins his 5th Top Fuel Classic and $50,000. Amato's time, the quickest of the day, 4:96 at 283 miles an hour. Ormsby had a slight advantage off the starting line as we look in replay. But Amato gobbled that up like it was a Thanksgiving turkey. Till by mid-course, he had built up a substantial lead and extended it to the finish line. Running the quickest time of the race, 4:96, and picking himself up another $50,000 payday in the Budweiser Top Fuel Classic. How happy can a crew get? Just watch. At the far end of the racetrack, let's join Don Garlitz.
A 4:96 at this time of the day and the racetrack like it is, I tell you, Joe, that's pretty good.
Well, what can I say, Don? $50,000. Tim Richards, my guys, Snoopy's riding on I got my Snoopy shorts on. He brought me all the luck we needed right now, but that's 5 out of 6. I don't know if I can keep this up, you know. I guess when the money shines, my team comes to the head of the line. We'll see what happens here.
Well, we would have certainly thought, you know, the odds were against you winning so many of them, but the team really came through. You came through. The car just performed flawlessly all day long.
Well, we got a little behind this weekend because we smoked the tires on our first qualifying run, but Timmy's, you know, the master he is, the weather, the track, he just, you know, the whole team. Tim Richards, my wife Jerry, Jeff Rogers, Jim Walsh, Tommy Vassie, Dick Moore, and Wayne Cannon. Every one of them guys deserves all the credit for making Joe Amato and my team Valvoline car. I mean, you got all the Valvoline people here this weekend, and some more money goes to say no to drugs. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this.
Congratulations.
For Don Garlitz and Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying
Shirley Muldowney. Now this man, Joe Amato, seeks to join those living legends. Standing squarely in his path, Gary Ormsby, the reigning world champ, looking to retain his title. Amato has 5 victories so far this year and a slight points lead heading into this final confrontation. Ormsby brings in 6 wins and appears to have the momentum coming into this moment of truth. Today on NBC Sports World, a champion will be crowned.
18 races all over the country, and it culminates today with the Winston Finals. The big story unfolding is in the top fuel division, where the champion, Gary Ormsby, is trying to hold off the challenger, Joe Amato. In the funny car division, it's already been wrapped up. John Force winning the season-long series. The Pro Stocks, though, as wide open as ever. Any one of 5 drivers could take the top honors. But back to that big story in the top fuel division. And with more on that story and the showdown that's developing right now, let's go to Steve Evans.
Joel, I think every drag racing fan in the Golden State is here at Pomona today. Because nobody wants to miss the championship final race for the top fuel category between the 2 best drivers of the year, Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato. In the 2 best cars of the year, nobody would deny that. And maybe the 2 best crew chiefs in the sport. For Joe Amato, there's Tim Richards. Amato calls him the general because he's always in charge. And that's the man that rinsed Amato to the title just 2 years ago in 1988. For Gary Ormsby, well, there's quiet, studied, and very dapper Lee Beard, a true student of the sport. He rinsed Ormsby to that same title just 1 year ago right here in Pomona. Now consider this. You talk about even over 18 races in 9 months. Both drivers have won 43 rounds of competition. It's a tie. But Amato came into this event with a 254-point lead because he's been to the final a few more times than Ormsby. Except in qualifying, it was Gary Ormsby setting low elapsed time at 5.01. 50 bonus points. He out-qualified Amato by 2 positions, 4 bonus points. So now it's 200. That means that Ormsby only has to go 1 more round than Amato to take the crown. Now, they both survived first-round competition earlier today, but in round number 2, they each meet a giant in the sport, either of which could upset this very delicate apple cart. For more on that, here is 3-time top fuel champ, Big Daddy Don Garland.
Well, Steve, Eddie Hill just ran a stellar 5:08, the best for him in many races, and the driver of this car, Don Prudo, he won his round with a 5:11, his very best since he entered top fuel this year. Now, we take a look at the ladder, we see the problem is Joe Amato faces Eddie Hill, and Gary Ormsby faces Don Prudo. They must get by these 2 competitors if they are to continue this championship duel. Now, if they do, they could conceivably face each other in the final round to decide the overall winner.
Joe Amato getting ready with his wife Jerry alongside. Nice touch to Eddie Hill's crew chief Bussy Carter coming in.
Well, Joel, I think that says no matter the outcome, there will be no hard feelings. But the pressure is really on that man, Gary Ormsby, more than it is Amato. Amato has that little points lead. If Ormsby loses in this round, his season is done with. Now, we started with 16 cars in eliminations this morning, round 1 pace.
Joe Amato getting ready for his 2nd race of the day, and don't forget, he wants to beat that fastest elapsed time of Gary Ormsby and pick up that extra 50 points.
That's right. If he can run better than 5:01, he not only earns himself 50 points, more importantly, he takes them away from Ormsby and makes Ormsby go 1 round further in eliminations to win the crown. But of course, Eddie Hill may have something to say about this whole deal.
Good point, Steve, as we see Joe Amato gaining traction in his pre-race drill. Amato, the 2-time Winston champion. And Joe Amato knows the experience of Eddie Hill could completely knock him out of the competition. Steve Evans talked with Eddie.
Eddie, you could ruin not only Joe Amato's day, but his whole year.
Yeah, we've already thought about that. I'd really like to see him win the championship, you know, but and he's a friend of mine, but we want to win this race, so we kind of got a little conflict there. What we're going to try to do is put him out.
I like his attitude, buddies, but not when they're next to each other.
And Don Garland, they face a very tricky racetrack. It's almost 90 degrees today. The sun's beating down on it. That's not a good combination.
No, it's not. A crew chief could certainly make a miscalculation on the clutch, and everything would go up in smoke.
I guarantee you one thing. Gary Ormsby and Lee Beard's favorite color right now is yellow. They are rooting for Eddie Hill with everything they have. And Hill loses traction. Amato's elapsed time, 5.02, 100th away from what he needed to rob Ormsby of those 50 points.
A quick one, but not quick enough. When we come back, it'll be Gary Ormsby in the round of 8. We'll find out if he stays in the competition. Winston Finals in Pomona, California, as Gary Ormsby in the fire lane gets ready for his second race of the day. Just before we broke away, we saw Joe Amato take care of Eddie Hill. Quick time, but not quick enough. And with more on that story, let's go to Steve Evans. He talks to Joe Amato.
Well, Joe, you completed half of the mission. The 5:02 takes the win, but doesn't take that 50 points away from Gary Ormsby.
It's tough in the heat to try and run, to get the 5:01 with us something. We're a heartbeat away. Our whole weekend's been a thousandth of a way all weekend. I just hope it doesn't come back to haunt me.
All right, Gary Ormsby now faces that tricky racetrack.
So he is only a heartbeat away. Oh, so close to that quickest elapsed time, which belongs to the man we're looking at right now, Gary Ormsby.
He would like to even improve on that time to make it tougher for someone to take it away. But on this racetrack, I just don't think in this heat that that's possible. Ormsby from Auburn, California, a very successful car dealer who's been drag racing since his teenage years. He'll be up against Don Prudo. I asked Don earlier how he's approaching this role as a spoiler.
I like to be a thorn in his side on this next round, to tell you the truth. And we've been kind of going back and forth all year, and I just like to step up and do one.
It's been a tough year, Don Garlitz, for Snake Prudhomme, but he has really put together some consistent times leading up to this matchup.
That 5:11 ET in the first round is the best that he has had this year.
Ormsby away first. Prudhomme cannot gun him down. Ormsby 5.12 seconds with a big speed of 283 miles per hour. Now, Joe Amato did not get the help he wanted from Don Prudo. But the good news for Joe is Ormsby's 5:12 is a tenth of a second slower than Joe's performance in the same lane in the same round.
For your party.
Well, Gary, you darn near saw your championship hopes go right out the window. That was quite a drag race.
Yeah, because Steve, I can't see him unless they're in front of me. He never was in front of me, but I guess it was pretty close.
You're 5:12. This car is not performing the way you and Lee Beard want it to.
No, it really hasn't. We've been stumbling since the last couple of runs yesterday, and it hasn't run well at all today, or the first round or this round either.
You need to protect that 5:01 yourself, those 50 points.
For sure. That's a lot. 50 points is a ton right now.
And let's remind you, those 50 points could spell the difference in the overall season-long championship.
There is.
The NHRA Winston Finals continue in Pomona, California. Welcome back once again. Joel Myers along with Steve Evans. Don Garlitz, things working well right now in the pits of Gary Ormsby.
Well, they're disassembling that engine. They are trying desperately to find that tenth of a second that has eluded them today. While over on the Amato pits, they're just mechanically going through it, methodically checking everything. They don't want to lose any performance.
So the showdown continues in the top fuel division. That will be coming up as we head back to the pits. And there's Jerry Amato mixing fuel right now for her husband Joe as he gets set to the semifinals and his confrontation with Gene Snow. Over in the Ormsby camp, there's Susie Hoops, Gary's girlfriend. It may look relaxed, but believe me, the pressure is there on Gary Ormsby and his counterpart Joe Amato. Showdown developing. We're getting ready for the semifinals. They're towing Joe Amato's car through the pits now. He gets ready for his matchup against Gene Snow. But the one Amato is most worried about is the gentleman we're looking at right now, Gary Ormsby. He'll be taking on Kenny Bernstein.
And as Gary Ormsby puts on his fire suit and helmet, you can bet the big thought on his mind is that 5:11 that Bernstein cranked out in that round before and got lane choice.
When we come back to Pomona, it is going to be the top fuel duel, Ormsby, Amato, and the semifinals after these messages from your local station. Once again to the NHRA Winston Finals, Joel Myers along with Steve Evans, Don Garlitz. We're looking at Joe Amato getting ready for the semifinals in the top fuel.
And from where he sits in that car, he can see Gary Ormsby and Kenny Bernstein getting ready to stage. He is so nervous. He's like a cat inside that cockpit, Don Garlitz.
Yes, he is. He is saying, Bernstein, if you ever did anything right in your life, it's time.
Oh, absolutely, because if Gary Ormsby should fall to the red car of Kenny Bernstein, this championship chase is over. The title, the money, the glory belongs to Joe Amato. All things have been equal pretty much during the day for both Amato and Gary Ormsby. Ormsby here does not have lane choice. Is that a big deal, Don?
It could be. It means to him that there's a car sitting in the other lane that could possibly outperform him. It did in the previous round.
Here we go. Ormsby lowers his shield. Bernstein is set. The most interested spectator among the 40,000 here will be Joe Amato. Lee Beard loves what he sees. Tim Richards, he hates it. Gary Ormsby goes to the final round at 5.02. Let's go to Don Garlits on the starting line.
That's a little better.
Well, we're tuning it up to race the big guy in the final. If we get a shot at him, we're going to throw everything we can. There's a lot of money at stake. Our fans been supporting us all year long. I cannot stress to you how important it is for me to win the World Championship.
The crew chief, Lee Beard. Gary Ormsby on his way to the finals.
Gary Ormsby in the near lane, Bernstein in the far lane. Watch the starting line advantage on Bernstein. He is doing the best we've seen this year. But the Lee Beard prepared engine began to reel Bernstein in as they got the half track, and by the time they got to the end, the 502 had done the job.
And now the pressure shifts to Joe Amato.
Not only does Gary Ormsby, without lane choice, beat Kenny Bernstein to gain a final round berth, you picked up your performance to run with Amato. 5:02, the same numbers he's been running all day.
Yeah, Steve, we made a big move there, and it worked for us, looks like.
But I guess it was in the clutch?
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
He was out on you a little bit. Bernstein may be the best leader in this sport.
Yeah, he did get out. I mean, I didn't want to take any chances. I'm not making excuses, and I just wasn't really on up there. I did not want to lose by red light or, you know, some other way by just actually winning.
Would you like to know what happens on the finish, on the starting line right now?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we better go and watch, huh?
So now Gary Ormsby is turning his attention to the top of the racetrack, the starting line. For the next matchup in the semifinals, Gene Snow and Joe Amato. Will Amato hold up his end of the deal?
Well, Joe Amato wants to do two things. He wants to win this round so that he can get to Ormsby in the final, but he would also like to set Lorie T so that he will own the 50 points instead of them belonging to Ormsby at the present time.
Now, Gene Snow has not been in the same performance league as Amato and Ormsby all day long, but that doesn't mean anything with that particular team. They are capable of going from 550s to 490s in one run. We've seen them do it often over the years. Amato in the far lane, Snow in the near lane. Amato has got to win to keep pace.
It all depends on the track and the tires for Gene Snow. If the tires will hold, he could do it.
Absolutely, he could be a contender. Oh, Snow was right there, but it's Amato into the final round. Gary Ormsby, the Iceman, does not even react. A 5:03 for Amato, 280 miles per hour. Down on the starting line is Don Garlits to talk to the winning crew chief, Tim Richards.
Well, it fell off just a tad.
Yeah, we weren't really leaning on it too hard. I didn't want to lose lane choice there, but I didn't expect the Ormsby to go that 5:02 either, but we'll see in the final. This track will be a lot better, I think, then.
So it is all set up now. Thank you, Tim Richards, Joe Amato, and Gary Ormsby. By virtue of that victory we just saw, we take another look, Don.
Gene Snow in the near lane, Amato in the far lane. And again, we see the challenger take a starting line advantage over Amato. Gene Snow looked like he wanted to beat him, but Amato's power, produced by Tim Richards, was just too much. Look at that car march in the middle of the track, completely overpowering Gene Snow's with a 280-mile-an-hour top speed to Gene Snow's 266. A decisive victory.
And the pressure continues to build.
Kenny Bernstein more or less apologizing to Joe Amato for not taking care of Gary Ormsby. The whole season comes down to one race.
That's called pressure, buddy. I mean,
you wanted a 4-second run, you got a 5:03.
That means I lost lane choice, too.
That's right.
Pretty important right here. I mean, but thank God the sun's going down on Parker Avenue, and by the time we get to run, it'll be 2 lanes will be good, I hope. And boy, the whole season, 19 races, come down to world champion, over $250,000 on the line. I don't know. That's a lot of pressure.
We can't wait.
I know. The fans are getting it. The TV people are getting it. I don't know if I like it so much, but that's what racing's all about.
Absolutely. Parker Avenue, the name of this drag strip after the former police chief of the city of Pomona.
We now have our final pairing in the top fuel division. Joe Amato and Gary Ormsby. So after an entire season of racing, it comes down to this. So much at stake. All up for grabs, and Ormsby with the lane choice. So we now have our final set in the top fuel, also in the funny car.
Larson has lane choice and has taken that far lane as most drivers have. So Tim Richards and Joe Amato will be very interested in seeing how McCullough's car performs in the opposite lane, probably where Ormsby will put them. As Gary slips on his fire suit, he too will be watching this funny car finale with great interest. Lee Beard in a world of his own.
Lane choice so critical as we get ready now for the funny car finals. And McCullough in the near lane. Larson to the far side.
It is Ed McCullough winning at Pomona for the first time in 18 years, winning his first ever Winston Finals title. And in the twilight, you
Back
can
in the
see...
starting line now. This is a strange move. Lee Beard has called for a lane change.
Yeah, Joel, I can't believe this is happening. Lee Beard, just because a little smoke came off of Larson's car, is giving up the far lane. It's been the best lane all day long. This is just what Amato wants.
This has got to be considered a shocking development as we get ready for the Top Fuel final. So after 19 races, 9 long months, it all boils down to one race, and we'll be right back with that. Beginning to set right now in the 1990 race season, but one big showdown remains.
This is simply unbelievable. Both Gary Ormsby and Joe Amato have been down the track 46 times this year, but now this is the only one that matters, the final at the Winston Finals.
Steve, when you consider all the bonuses that are involved and the season-long championship prize money, there is better than $250,000 at stake on this one race.
And we just saw the look of concern on both of the crew chief faces. Everybody who bought a ticket to this event is still here. And of course, Gary Ormsby's girlfriend, Susie Hoops, she's holding her breath.
Well, they say, Steve, you're only good as your last round. If we look at that, we got to say that Ormsby's got an advantage. 5:02 to 5:03 for Amato.
And Steve and Don, let's not forget, the far lane today has seen a great deal of success. But Lee Beard, the crew chief for Gary Ormsby, who had a lane choice, decided to go with the near lane. That could be the determining factor.
Yeah, it may not be the last race that you run that was so important, but that last decision that you made.
And you want a bizarre twist? Gary Ormsby could win this race and still lose the championship. Susie Hoops knows this. If Joe Amato sets low ET quicker than 5:01, no matter whether he gets to the finish line first or not, he will win the money in the title. Incredible. Pre-stage. Ormsby has red lighted. He has left too soon. The championship is Joe Amato's.
Unbelievable development. Joe Amato takes it all as Gary Ormsby red-lighted at the outset, trying to get that reaction time, that jump.
And what a parting shot by Joe Amato. The quickest time of the entire event, 4.93 seconds.
As we watch the replay, we see it's obvious. Look at the flames come up on Ormsby. He was an hour and a half early. His brain completely faded away at the stress of the championship. With that one mistake, he lost everything. Let's watch it again. Ormsby is on your left.
And the most dejected man in Pomona, California, Gary Ormsby, who failed to defend his championship. Down to the new champ, now Joe Amato.
In the most drama-packed Top Fuel final in the history of drag racing, Joe Amato has won his third Winston Crown.
Speechless. I guess now we can say Joe knows drag racing, buddy.
With that 4.93, Ormsby could have gotten the win light. You'd still be the champion.
Well, what can I say, Steve? You know, that was a lot of pressure and tension for the whole week, but we were trying to win the race. The whole enchilada, you know, but Gary, the cars, you know, they stepped up the last round. My team did an outstanding job this weekend. Boy, they came through under pressure. Every one of them, Tim Richards, Jim Waltz, my wife, Jerry, Wayne Cannon, Dick Moore, Jeff Rogers, I mean, all of them. Oh, God.
And as important almost being, well, along with Don Garlis and Shirley Muldowney, the only driver to win 3.
That puts me in a special class to be with Don Garlis, Shirley Muldowney. I can't even say my name. Now, Joe Amato, a 3-time world champion. You know, plus to win the championship for Team Valvoline, Keystone, all the guys at the warehouse. You know, they'll be off my case a little bit. If I lost, it would have made a tough winner. But boy, my team, they came through in the clear.
Let's celebrate.
A great day of racing and more celebration for the Amato camp as Joe's just been named the SEMA Goodyear Driver of the Race. An emotional time and a great way to end the 1990 racing season. For Steve Evans and Don Garlitz, I'm Joel Myers. Thank you for joining us from Pomona on NBC Sports World.